Boy, well, then take a young you, put young yal, young and yellow got to God, Marlon Panda, Unco, little girl, Kunor, Pokemon, Yaran, young bike, just get out, got going, my leg, a dear nugget, yeah, the pine won't have on a tube, uncle. You're bugging Iran, you Iran, Kagaja, you work, marriage, your let your panda, you're a job, Lebanon, you work, Tongo. Dari jaru lebano di cupaca kepala luel kamu tur kong yang dai uga tong kedua kornya dua barang wedai biak belang penu ganong ran kimeni kimadak oi kon wena gumalan mabong biar majura dor nyempiu gal marial rong gum wajah kon galam goy maker makuro gal mutir bai utenya bialam derbien majura lem kumama yorban oi ngwan nging motor be yetiani bang tukul maker be kelo gayan wajal jigana tong ilion ti jurgo long ile narbong go dogi le bring cerbengor tongran me melonda to dom ile yang bai jegedau ga koy miran mai le gedir na geje de kwang unga blon ju nang koy bang yiran ju yiran ke dai je yubak mare jodule jodbanda dore jodule banongo yutwar ku jongo gare jodule banor ji kwaja ku pile le wa mutul kong yang dai uga tung de kornya dua barang weda.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Those of you in Clubhouse, and I'm live in the studio at South Sudan Eagle Media. My guest for this evening is Dr. Biar Ajak. We will be discuss about the issues going on in Eastern Equatoria between the community and the cattle keepers. Thank you for those of you turning in Facebook and YouTube Live, and also in Clubhouse. So now we will start. This is an interview. Will be is a roundtable discussion with Dr. Biar Ajak, and then Kamis, you will control the room over there. Later on, when we come to the point that we will allow the audience to have the question to Dr. Biar Ajak, you will open the hand raise and let people come up. But before that, I would like to take your microphone back to Dr. Peter Biar. Thank you so much for coming to South Sudan Eagle Media. This is a very good topic that we'll discuss tonight. I would like to give microphone back to you, introduce yourself, and then we start our program. Thank you for coming in.
Well, thank you very much, Madid Majak, for the invitation. It's a great honor to be invited again today to participate in this conversation that is being hosted by the Eagle Media. This is a very important topic because our people in South Sudan, they're suffering. The country is completely in crisis. We have been experiencing all these difficulties now for quite some time. But every year, in the states of things getting better, even under the facade that there is a peace agreement that is being implemented in the country, you find that the situation is getting worse and worse. And our people are being turned against each other, and they are killing each other in mass. It's no longer just an issue of cattle raiding that is happening, and that has been happening in Jonglei, in Lake State, in Wairap, in Unity, and in many other parts of the country. But now it has reached a level where communities are fighting each other, and the politicians in Juba are watching and cheering this on and supporting this. So this is very disgusting. And I'm glad that it has occurred to you to invite me to have this conversation with you so that we really discuss this in detail and in sincerity, so that we inform our people what is really happening, why it is happening, and what can be done to make sure that we overcome these challenges.
Thank you so much, Dr. Biar Ajak. Yeah, you are right. These issues have been going on for the past few weeks. There is a lot of war breakout conflict between in eastern Equatoria and central Equatoria among community. Special, we will be focused in MAGWI area. MAGWI is a place that where there is a fight went in for the last few weeks. Many people lost their life, both sides between the community and cattle keepers. And also, these are the two things that affect this area: cattle keepers and land. These are the two things that we will discuss tonight. So my question to you, Dr. Biar, what the Dingabor cattle keepers caused the shock in Eastern Equatoria? How can this problem can be solved between these two communities?
Well, first of all, what is very important to understand in this crisis is that both the cattle keepers as well as the farmers, who are the inhabitants of MAGWI and of Eastern Equatoria, are all victims in this crisis that they are faced, and in which they themselves are being killed. There's a lot of incitement that is happening, and there is a lot of issues are made up to incite people to violence, things that do not really matter when you really reflect on the grand scheme of things. If you see, my brother, since the independence of South Sudan, there was a lot of promises that were made to our people of how their lives would change. None of that has been delivered in terms of education, social services, access to opportunities. None of that has happened. There were, even back before the independence, after the end of the conflict with the CPA, there was promises that were made by the SPLM on how to transform the economy and transform the country, using oil as the engine of that transformation to spur agriculture, to ensure that the livestock sector grows, and that the livestock were to be provided with the infrastructure that they require for the animal to be treated, for the slaughterhouses to be opened and to prosper. None of this has happened. In fact, the situation of our people has got worse. And over the time, we're also dealing with other emerging situations, including the issues of climate change, where now we are seeing a lot of natural disasters within the country, particularly in the form of flood and drought. So this is making it difficult for people to stay in the ancestral areas. And in that context, people are fleeing to find where they can stay, where they can live, and where they can pursue livelihoods, because the government that they have fought for and have brought to power has abandoned them. So they are fending for themselves. So you find that these cattle keepers, they have been moving around from different parts of the country. They have settled there. But also, it's important to note historically, my brother, that the area of MAGWI and Eastern Equatoria in general has been inhabited by a lot of people from different parts of the country, dating back during the period of the war. And you find that in that area, yes, the Dinka Boer people are quite numerous, and that was initially because of the conflict that happened in 1991 and the Boer massacre that was orchestrated by the forces of Nasser faction. So when that happened, the entire population of Boer was displaced, and it moved to the SPLM strongholds of Eastern Equatoria. If you remember, when the split happened, the two factions were called the Nasser faction and the Taurid faction. And Taurid, of course, is the capital of Eastern Equatoria. And the reason why it was called the Taurid faction, this was where the bases of the SPLM, SPLA were. And this was the stronghold of the movement. So a lot of people move in that area, the areas like Loboni, Ameh, and Nimle became displaced camps where a lot of people settled. And those people have lived there, and they have lived in harmony with their hosts in those communities for quite some time. Even if you go even to the area of Kapoita, you find that there are Dinka Boer people there. I was actually surprised to meet one young man from that area during my detention at the Blue House, who, although he's a Dinka Boer, he speaks Taposa more fluently than he speaks the Dinka Boer language. So those people have been living there in harmony with the hosts, and they've been living fine. But all of a sudden now you hear all this talk about the conflict, and of course now the conflict has become real. What you see, my brother, is that this conflict is manufactured, is actually engineered by people that want to divide our people and turn them against one another. And this is why I said from the very beginning that the farming communities as well as the cattle keepers are both victims of machinations that are being plotted against the people of South Sudan by a host of politicians in Juba who only care about their own interests and about their own power. So fixing this problem requires fixing politics that has been messed up in Juba, and to ensure that you have in Juba responsible political leadership that actually care about the livelihoods and welfare of our people. Because even these mediations that are supposed to happen, they don't happen in sincerity, because you find that politicians are providing arms to civilians. And this violence is happening because of those weapons that are being provided by these politicians, senior politicians in the government. So to fix this problem is not just an issue of communities sitting down. They can sit down and they can talk in good faith. But the problem is tomorrow, the same politicians that have created the crisis will come back and confuse the people and get them again to fight once more. So this thing is a fundamental problem. We cannot see it as a standalone problem in MAGWI and in Eastern Equatoria, or see it as a standalone problem related to cattle keepers and farmers. This is a part of the wider problem and wider crisis that has engulfed South Sudan and whose origin is based in Juba. And for that crisis to be resolved, we have to approach it in a comprehensive perspective so that we really address the fundamental problems that are facing our people.
Thank you, Dr. Biar. Yeah, you're right. This is the issue that we see opposition like NAS involved, and the government is not doing nothing to stop to bring these two communities together. My next question is about how can we, how the government can do and to let the cattle keepers go back. I hear Honorable Mokunwe talk other day, like a couple of weeks ago, telling the cattle keepers to go to turn back to their own place. And it's that more like I read the article days, there was another fire happening in central Victoria, and many people got killed. And this, what my question to what the reason why now these two communities that believe peaceful seeing the article when there was a movement, Equatorial land where everybody, but after we get independent, now the issues of cattle and the land is a big problem in that part of the region. What will be done for these two communities to live in peace and harmony?
Well,
this is
the first thing, my brother, is government in Juba has not been very helpful. In fact, the government in Juba has more or less neglected its duty to the people of South Sudan. And it has, in a state, been confusing them. It has actually been a source of confusion for the people of South Sudan, has not been providing any clarity. If you take, for example, now those who are saying that these people should go back to Jonglei. First of all, let us see the state of situation in Jonglei. Jonglei today has been engulfed by a number of different crises. The primary one being the flooding. We are all aware that the last 2 years, actually is now, the last 2 years, 2020 and 2021, have seen unprecedented level of discharge of water from Lake Victoria into the Nile. And we have also received like large amount of torrential rain. This has created enormous amount of flood that has affected many, many different states within South Sudan, and Jonglei being the epicenter of this flood. We have seen videos and pictures of literally hundreds of heads of cattle drowning and being washed away in this flood. And this is the economic resource of these people. It's not like the government is providing them anything. If anything, they're the ones that are actually providing for themselves. Government is not doing anything at all to help them. Whether it is immunization of the livestock, there's nothing that the government is providing them. So all these cattle died. During the crisis, the government did not even provide resources to evacuate the people. Everybody was missing in action. Both the state government as well as the national government was missing in action. It was only the people of Jonglei themselves that gather, raise money on their own with their brethren in Australia, Canada, United States, in East Africa, and all over around the world. They gathered. You remember, Brother Madid, if you've seen pictures of individual like Ayau Deng Kudum, for example, a former beauty pageant that represented South Sudan in beauty contests all around the world. She went to Jonglei. She went into the areas of flood, and then she did a number of live shows to encourage the people in the diaspora to contribute money, and they contributed money. This is how some of the lives were actually saved, is because the community didn't realize that they can never depend on the government of South Sudan or the government of the state. So they took the matters in their own hand, raised money, and they managed to evacuate as many people as possible. Some have gone to the part of Lake State, and then some moved to the part of Equatoria. And this is why now you have a displacement camps in Mangala and in other parts of the country. This was done entirely by the community. And ever since, there is nothing that the government has done to then help dealing with the flood management, whether it is the construction of the dikes or thinking of ways to allow the water to move. Nothing at all has been done. So the flood remained. The area is entirely evacuated. So if you go now to Jonglei, there are very few people available. All the crops that were planted has died because of the flood. So now imagine, people are being told to go there, and how are they going to how are those animals going to survive in water in an area that is entirely engulfed by floods? So that is the first question. The second question and the second problem that is facing Jonglei is the problem of insecurity. It was just last month that we were all shocked by that attack in Baidit that was orchestrated by Murle raiders from Pibor County that came in, raided cattle, and killed women and children and men and whoever that they could find. So you have, and this is not the first time. We have all been seeing this since the signing of CPA in 2005. This issue has continued unabated. And you even hear very unsentimental statements coming from responsible entities within the government, chief of whom is President Salva Kiir himself, who said last time that if these people are going to fight, let them fight. He's just going to hang out in Juba in his stronghold and will only deal with whoever that managed to flee to Juba. So he made it very clear that he's not going to do anything to arrest the situation in Jonglei and to control that conflict that is getting out of control. And we have seen time again that the decisions that he made are intended to actually make it difficult for the people of Jonglei to govern themselves and to address the issues of insecurity that they face. Every time when competent governors are appointed in Jonglei and they begin doing what needs to be done to deal with the issues of Murle incursion and attack on innocent people in Jonglei, President Kiir will intervene and remove them and bring in the stooges who have no authority within the community, who have no ability to actually organize the people to be able to contain the insecurity situation that the Jonglei face. So now you have these two big issues. The issue of flood on one hand, and then you have the issue of insecurity that people are dealing themselves without any help whatsoever from the state government, without any help whatsoever from the national government. And when they have themselves decided to flee, to go to the part of the country where they can be safe and where the animal can be safe, then the same government comes up again, manufactures stories and lies, and incite the population so that these people are attacked. This is complete. This is the situation we face. So the notion that somehow these people have to go to Jonglei, do they now, the government tell them to go to Jonglei? Do they go to Jonglei to do what? So that the animal can go and die or be raided, so that the women and children will be attacked and killed? And by the way, there have been a lot of allegations that have come out that the same Murle bandits that have been causing insecurity in Jonglei state are actually armed by the government of South Sudan through the National Security Service. So now imagine government is pushing these people to go back to an area so that they are attacked by bandits that are in cahoots with the government. This is completely shocking and is utterly unacceptable.
Thank you, Dr. Biar Ajak. Yes, I see that, right now this is almost rainy season is coming and it's a farming season. And this community, they always complain about the cattle keepers, they let their cow into their farm. So what will be done between these two if they cattle keepers keep their cattle in the equatorial area? How can they prevent the cow to go to the farm?
Yes, and that is the legitimate issue. That is a legitimate issue from the side of the host community. If indeed the cattle are going in and eating and grazing in the farm areas, that is unacceptable, because just as I was talking about how the people of Jonglei have been neglected by the government, is exactly the same. The people of Eastern Equatoria have also been neglected by the government of South Sudan. If you go now into the side of Capoeira, these people are dealing with drought. There is no water. Livestock have been dying. There is nothing that grows. Getting basic water to be drank is impossible, leave alone the water that can be used by the cattle for the cattle. So the same people have been neglected. So what is really required now is for these people to sit down and talk and discuss areas in which the cattle can be based and areas of the settlement. There is one statistic that I want to mention, my brother Madid Majak. South Sudan is a very large country. It's about the size of Ukraine that we now see in conflict, which is also equivalent to the size of Texas and equivalent to the size of France. It's a very big country. And also, only 9% of South Sudan is inhabited by people. That means 91% of the land is completely empty. No one is there. And each time you keep hearing about issues of land is a problem. People are contesting land. No, right. Land is not a problem. Land is not a constraint in South Sudan. It has never been a problem. The problem is politicians have been looking at ways to continue to divide the people of South Sudan and keep them in perpetual conflict. So in some of these areas, you find that the cattle camps are far away from the farm. There are incidences where an accident happens and the cattle move and they go and find themselves inadvertently in the farms. But generally speaking, these cattle camps are very far away. They're in the forest, in areas where most of the time there's no one that is living there. They're usually grazing in the forest. So the issue is being politicized, and part of the crisis is what the government has been doing. Chief among which is the decree that the President Salva released several years ago, ordering cattle out of Equatoria. And that decree itself was unconstitutional. There is nowhere that the president has any power to order certain economic activities out of a certain state within the same country. That doesn't exist. cattle are economic activity. They're just like goods. They're like potatoes, and they're like carrots or cassava. And there is nowhere that a head of state can say that certain economic activities cannot be moved to other parts. It was a mistake. And the president should actually withdraw that degree of his, because that degree is completely unconstitutional. There's nothing that gives him the power to say that cattle from Bargazal cannot enter Upper Nile, or cattle from Upper Nile cannot enter Equatoria, or cattle from Equatoria cannot enter Bargazal. That was completely unacceptable. And if the intention was because of certain generals that were keeping cattle, including himself, who was keeping a large head of cattle in Luri, then that is entirely separate. But the issue of economic activity and participation in economic activity is a right that is enshrined by the Constitution. And it's the same thing. Statesmen like what was attributed to the Minister of Information, saying that people of Jonglei must move their cattle. That is unacceptable. It's the people that decide where they go. They are free citizens of South Sudan. They can move anywhere within the country called South Sudan. If there are conflicts and there are contestations related to how the cattle and the farms can coexist, this is the issue that can be mediated. And if the government want to be helpful, then it can help in the mediation of such crisis. Not to say certain people must go back to the ancestral home. We are trying to build a nation called South Sudan. We are trying to build a national identity as people of South Sudan. And you cannot be telling people that they are not welcome in a certain part of the country and that people should settle only in the ancestral land. What does that even mean? All the land belongs to the people of South Sudan. Today, we have borders that are not demarcated. We have occasion where foreign neighbors are encroaching into our territory. This is obvious in the northern part of the country with the Sudan encroaching. It's obvious in the southern part with Kenya encroaching in, having now entirely annexed the Lemi Triangle. It's also the case with Uganda encroaching in. Are we going to say that these land will be defended by the ancestral communities that own those land? Are they not part of the sovereign territorial entity called South Sudan? And if that is the case, how is it that certain South Sudanese are told by a presidential order and by a spokesperson of the government that they are not welcome in certain part of the country?
Thank you, Dr. Peter Biar Ajak. Miss, right now I will open the floor. I know there will be a lot of people who will ask questions in Clubhouse. And for those of you who are watching in Facebook and YouTube, if you want to ask a question, just write. Your comment.
Welcome in certain part of the country.
Open the way you can you way Dr. Biar, yeah, then come if you have a question to ask in Facebook if on and YouTube, if you want to ask a question, just write.
Some echo there.
Yeah, you close your mic. Okay. Okay, Dr. Peter Biar Ajak, can you hear me right?
I can hear you, yes.
Do you have any another open advice? The way.
Okay, I think, yeah, sorry. I can hear you now. There was a bit of background noise.
Yeah, there. Okay. Then commit, yeah, go ahead if you want to ask a question.
Oh, okay. Thanks to Madit and Dr. Biar. Garang, actually, then Garang Dut.
Can you hear him, right?
Yeah, I can hear him.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I have one question for you. You said the citizens should have a freedom of movement to live anywhere. And if you go and live somewhere, you have to move with your property. Cattle are part of our livestock in South Sudan, particularly in eastern Equatoria and some part of central Equatoria and Jonglei state in both, and Murley, all of us around the area. But in constitution of South Sudan, that was actually transferred from the CPA. It stated exactly that the land is belong to the community, and it looked like that's where the communities are going to now, telling the other citizens not to come and live around their neighborhood. So what do you say about that? Because it looks like you are blaming the government. Are you against that constitution, or what are you telling us here? Are you saying that the citizens don't have a right to say no? Nobody will come and live with us here based on the constitution because they are following the constitution of South Sudan. It's in there. It said the land is belong to the certain community, the respected community that lives there. So I think that's where the problem is. What can we do as a citizen of Jonglei State? If the people come and live with us, and the constitution says that we have a right not to live with other people because we can reject them based on the constitution of the South Sudan. What can you tell us about it?
Okay, thank you, Denkamis. Dr. Peter, go ahead and answer the question.
Yes, thank you, Denkamis, for that question. You are very right. There is an article in the Constitution that says exactly that the land belongs to the community. But if you read that article closely, it says, yes, the land belongs to the community, but its use shall be regulated by the government. And what we are talking here is the use of land. I don't think the cattle keepers in Jonglei are trying to pick up the land in Equatoria and put it in their head and move away with it. I don't think that is the issue. It's not an issue of ownership. We know to whom that land belongs. But the issue at stake here is the issue of the use of land, which the Constitution says quite explicitly that it can be regulated by the government. So that government can regulate that, and that regulation should be consistent with the performance of economic activities in the country. If I want to make an investment today in Bantu, I have a right to go there and make that investment in that country, provided that I have a business entity that has been registered in the country. So the government can help that. But the most important point that I want to mention in regard to this, my brother Denkamis, when that article was written, it was actually the article first appeared in the CPA. And then later on, it was put into the interim constitution of Southern Sudan of 2005. And the idea behind it at that time was that in the old Sudan, that is the Sudan before the CPA, the constitution was very explicit. It said that the land belonged to the government of Sudan. That was the article that was in the constitution then. In fact, that's the way the constitution of Sudan has been since Jafar Nimeri took power in 1969. He made sure that the land belonged to the government. Now, what was worrying, the reason why the Southern Sudanese did not like that and change it, was that during the war, especially from the time of mid-1990s onward, the Sudanese government, especially after the SPLA-SPLM, began recovering from the blunders of the Nasser faction, and it was now beginning to gain ground and take the war to the northern part of the country. The Sudan government was quite desperate, extremely desperate, and before it was able to exploit the oil, because the flow of the oil, as you remember, began toward the late 1990s. Before that, they were very desperate and they could not get money. And what they began to do was to sell land to investors from the Middle East, particularly from the Gulf state, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. Those countries, of course, as you know, they are all desert. and they rely on food imports for their population. So they bought land in Sudan so that they can come and farm. And John Garang and the others within the SPLM were worried that if we did not change this, the North Sudanese would likely claim, since the land belonged to the government of Sudan, and that the sovereign government of Sudan was the one based in Khartoum, and the government of Southern Sudan was only a sub-regional entity that did not have sovereignty, they may then sell land that belonged to South Sudanese people to outsiders. And to prevent that, this is why that article was put into the CPA and later into the interim constitution of Southern Sudan, that the land belonged to the communities, so that it would be impossible for the Sudanese regime of Omar al-Bashir to sell our land. That was the intention. It was not to give the community arbitrary right to say we reject so and so from our land and we reject so and so from our land. And when we interpret this article in the Constitution, we must always remember the spirit in which it was written. Because when we interpret legal documents, it's not just about the letter, what is written there within the document, but what is the spirit? What was the intention of that language and why that language was put? That language was put so that our land is not sold. That was the pure intention, not to prevent other South Sudanese who died in the liberation of the country from the use of the same land. So that is a mistake. And what has really fueled that is what I said before, is the decree that President Kiir issued, and it was based on very wrong advice. It's not the only first decree that the president has issued that is contradictory to both the letter and the spirit of the Constitution. There have been so many decrees that the president issued of the same nature. And the result from those decrees has been complete confusion. It includes, for example, like when he decided to create the 28 states. That was completely unconstitutional, but he still did it because the man has no respect for the Constitution. And we have created a culture in South Sudan where rule of law is not valued. So the issue here is the issue of conflict. And how do you prevent cattle from getting into the land of farmers and causing loss to them? That is a legitimate issue that should be addressed. But addressing it is not to separate the people of South Sudan, is to find ways in which you can encourage the people of South Sudan to deal with one another. Because cattle are not going anywhere. Whether we like it or not, cattle will remain as part of our heritage as people of South Sudan. And also, farming is not going anywhere. Farming is also going to remain as part of our heritage. And the reason why we are a nation and we are a state is so that we can coexist and so that we get to know each other and form values and norms that hold us together. And we cannot do that separating our people. The only way to do it is encouraging our people to put their differences aside and come up with working solution that can allow them to enjoy the abundance that Lord has given them. I mentioned to you before, only 9% of South Sudan is inhabited by people. The other 91% is no man's land. So how is it that we are fighting over land and 91% of it has not yet even been used? It shows that there is a fundamental problem in Juba, and we have to fix that. Hello? I think we have lost the host and the moderator. So I'm waiting for him to come back to the studio. And then once that happens, then we will continue with this question. But if there are questions, I suppose I can read them. Okay, he said he's signing back on now. So once he comes, then we will continue. But I will also read underneath some of your comments and see if there are some that I can address. See if there are some that I can address.
That the government.
Okay, Dr. Biar, can you hear me?
But since you
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Welcome back.
Thank
I've
you.
been wondering what is going on with you.
Yes, network has been hacked.
Okay,
so
Dr. Biar, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Let's say we are all looking at the position
Okay.
of the president, and it seems like that's why we always have an argument. We don't consider other branches of.
I think.
Okay.
You have
a bit. We are back.
You can close that one. You are muted, Madid.
Yes.
I think you may have your Facebook or another window open in the background, so maybe you can close that one.
Yes, it's a clubhouse. They are opening. Okay, so we are back, guys. So thank you. Be patient enough. Okay, we are back. So sorry, Dr. Peter Biar. We have network issues. So my network has been hijacked for some reason. So that's why I drop off. But it's good now.
Okay.
So as you said, Dekamis, your question has been answered. Do you want to say more about that question for Dekamis, Dr. Peter?
No, I think I have said enough. I said before that the article in the Constitution, first of all, it says yes, the land is owned by the community, but the use of the land is regulated by the government. So the government can regulate it in a way that will allow our people to make the most and the best use of the land. The second point that I mentioned was the reason why that article was put in the Constitution was because the NIF regime of Omar al-Bashir was getting very desperate in the 1990s when the SPLM, SPLA began to recover from the blunders of the Nasser faction of 1991. And when that happened, the SPLM was gaining momentum, taking the war to Eastern Sudan, to areas even just outside of Kassala. And it has already reversed all the losses that has happened because of the Nasser faction, and it was controlling more than 95% of the territory in South Sudan. So they got desperate, they needed money. They began selling land, a lot of land, to investors from the Middle East, particularly from the Gulf state of United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. So John Garang was worried that the land in South Sudan might be sold by the INF regime because they know that we may secede and create our own country. So as they remain as the sovereign government in Khartoum, there was a fear that they will probably begin selling the land in Southern Sudan. So to avoid that, this article was put in the CPA as well as into the interim constitution of South Sudan to protect our land from being sold by the Arabs in Khartoum. That was the idea. It was not to basically say the communities own the land and they can do with it as they please. That can never happen. The land belonged to the people, just as the state of South Sudan belonged to the people. It doesn't belong. There is no such a thing as a Dinka land or a Nuer land or Equatorian land or whatever. The settlement happened long ago through the patterns of migration. But once we became a state called South Sudan, the land belonged to South Sudan, and the land belonged to the South Sudanese people, and they can use it. Now, what has to happen is to use it in a way that benefits everyone, whether they are cattle keepers, they are farmers, or whoever that is.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Peter Biar Ajak. Then, Hamis, you can give the next person to ask the question. Tony.
Yeah, I'm here. So, yeah, thank you, Dr. Biar. What up later? I am from the same Payam, the same county, East and Payam of Wanglei, Payam. And, you know, we were the first victim of this land issue before the independence. So, and that's not what I'm trying to say, but we'll get on to that later. Tori, go ahead, open your mic and ask your question. And those who have actually been were up here and they dropped, can you just send me? Can you come back and I will send you an invite? Go ahead, Tori. I'll mute myself.
Okay, thank you, Brother Ben, and thank you, Brother. Also, thank you for joining us, Dr. Peter Biar. Clubhouse, I'm going to make a comment first before I actually ask you two questions. The first comment that I wanted to make is that when you mentioned that when the flood that took place in the Lake State, the community of Jungule Dinka actually raised a fund to help the community, not the government actually interfering, to help the community. I think this idea is all of us, the South Sudanese community across the country that are helping each other. And I'm going to make a comment on when Twitch Mayadi was affected by your they raised the funds in the Western world here to help their community. When we, Abungi community, also was affected by the Mayam, we also did the same thing. We raised it about 20,000 to help our displacement. Ms. May, she's in Clubhouse here, is one of the people who also raised the fund. The same thing to what I've said, Mrs. Joyce, part of Lona Moyen is also affected by Mayon. And they always raise funds to help the community. So in this case, if we actually speaking about that government doesn't help the citizens, then I think it is fair that all of us are being affected by the government, and the government doesn't actually help when the citizens do need help from the government. That is the comment that I just want to make. Going back to my question now, my first question, I wanted to know how far or how much have you been listening to Clubhouse? The reason why I ask is because in Clubhouse here, not only Clubhouse, but also the social media platforms such as Facebook, Clubhouse mainly, these issue of cattle rape or cattle, sorry, not cattle rape, but cattle keepers damaging the Equatorian land, and that cattle are damaging their crops, and that they want Dinka, and they want the cow keepers to move away from Equatoria. The reason why I'm asking this is because they are the ones who are preaching much about that Dinka has to move out from Equatoria, not the government that has been saying that people cannot live here, animals cannot live here. It is the Equatorians themselves that are preaching this, that they do not need the rest of South Sudanese, not only South Sudanese, but Dinka, that need to be moved out in Equatorial land. Um, my second question as well is that you stated that government hasn't done anything. And I wanted to know, as you are the doctor and also as an opposition person, have you made any suggestions to the community that has been affected by this issue that the cattle has to be moved back when we know clearly that the land itself is not dried up yet? It's still uh, disastered the, with the flood, and it's also still insecurity in that area, as you stated earlier, that lake is still, um, killing people and such of many other reasons. So I wanted to know, what suggestions have you made, has you, Dr. Peter Biar Ajak, to make this community be helped by your suggestions? Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Go ahead, Dr. Bia.
Well, thank you, Brother Madid, and I want to thank, is it Tony? Did you say, what's her name?
Yeah, Tony.
Tony.
Her real name is Marania Teague.
Okay. Well, I want to thank her very much for her insightful questions. I'm really delighted to have this conversation with you, and to all of you. Thank you very much. I will start with your second question. You know, I have become like the boogeyman in Juba. When something happened that touches on the government, is more or less blamed on me, and has reached a level where if I text someone and they realize this is Peter Biar, they will immediately run away and hide from me, because the very idea of me talking to someone make them so afraid that somehow they will be dealt with by the national security. So especially these senior government officials, I used to basically talk to everybody in the country, but since we fell out and have had the differences of opinion, these people, they try very much, they go to great pains to basically not want to interact with me. But I continue to talk with the regular people, and I talk with the chiefs and other traditional leaders. And indeed, I have made suggestions. Suggestions that I have made were that for the cattle keepers to sit down with their brethren and resolve this issue. It's not fair for them to allow their cattle to move into the farmland, and they can set up like committees. And I say this because we have experience in doing exactly this when I was still in South Sudan, running the Wrestling Federation, the South Sudan Wrestling Entertainment. Back then, the issue was more between the Dinka Bor and Mundari and the Dinka of Yorul. There were elements of cattle raiding. There was also the same problems of cattle moving into farms. And when we began the initiative to hold the wrestling tournament, there was a lot of opposition that this thing would never work. But we went ahead, organized the wrestling matches. And after the matches finished, we then organized for the youth leaders from the Dinka Board, from the Dinka of Yorul, and from Mundari to sit down and form committees to handle emergencies that may emerge between the three communities. So when there is an incident, they will call each other and they will talk and they will come immediately and try to make sure that that issue doesn't get out of control. So that has worked. If there is a space for them to do their own work without politicians interfering from behind and pushing these people to extreme. Now, what has made the situation here difficult is exactly what you have mentioned, which was your first question, the issue of clubhouses. I have never listened to any conversation in the clubhouse. I've never joined. I have heard of the divisive nature of this conversation. And this is a trend that we have seen, not just only in that platform, from all the other platforms on the social media, as you mentioned before. So that is a big challenge. I personally don't listen to it, but you are absolutely right. These platforms are being used to basically divide our people. And I hope it was just only what is happening in the clubhouse, but what is happening in Juba itself. During this conflict, I heard that some of the weapons that were captured by the cattle keepers included weapons that belong to the Minister of National Security. And I also heard that some of his own bodyguards, the Minister of National Security, this is Mahmoud Mete, were also killed during this crisis. So not just only the intellectuals and those in the diaspora that are able to participate in this clubhouse discussion, but also elements in Juba who are part of the government of South Sudan are supporting these efforts to divide our people and to encourage tribalism. Now, obviously, we should understand the wider issue why we are where we are now. Tribalism has become deeply rooted in South Sudan, and I blame the government for it. What the government has done since independence has entirely left the SPLM, and people have moved into communities and to tribes. This is how you lobby if you want to become a minister. You lobby according to your tribe, you lobby according to your community. When people come to visit the president, you have easier way of getting access to him if you come as community leader of community X or Y than if you just come as a political leader representing a particular political party. So the notion of politics as a contestation of ideas was lost, and it became an issue of identity where people are represented based solely on the nature of their ethnic identity. So you see now, SPLM has died. There is really no any other party. SPLM-IO is basically a tribal outfit. And every other organization in South Sudan that claim to be either a rebel group or a political party is more or less a tribal entity. So we do no longer have something that represents us. We do no longer have a politics that is directed toward ideas, toward policies, toward vision. And this one, we have to blame the government, and we have to blame particularly the president for creating this crisis. And finally, I appreciate your comment. Indeed, you are right. All the communities in South Sudan continue to face disasters from everywhere. Even now, we know our brothers in Abyei are suffering because they have just been attacked by the Mesriya. And recently, there has been a conflict in Abyei between the Ngok Dinka and Twitch Mayadit. And the government of South Sudan is absent. It's not even trying to do anything at all to reconcile these communities or to defend the people of South Sudan that are being killed by foreigners from the north that are invading and destroying their livelihoods. It was the same thing a few months ago in Awil, when the Masuria and Rizagat crossed into Awil, killed people in the areas of Awil West and in Awil East, and settled in the territories. It was only the church leaders that were able to mobilize humanitarian aid and go to the rescue of our people. So you are absolutely right. Every community in South Sudan is left to fend on its own, as if we do not have a government and we do not have a state. It seems the only time the government care is if there is an imminent threat to the occupants of J1. And even in that cases, what they will settle for is either bribery, or whether through money or through positions in the government. So we have a real crisis. And as I mentioned to you before, people of South Sudan are being divided. People are seeing that division pays. And part of the strategy of what is happening, you have elements within Juba that claim that they are part of the government in Juba, but they are actually supporting NAS. And they're using tribal, regional languages. You find that there is a general mobilization going on in the country to basically dupe the people of South Sudan into thinking that the government in Juba and Dinka are one and the same, which is completely misleading. Because where do we fit in people like me? I'm a Dinka, and I'm in opposition to this government. I'm aware of the limitation of this government and the mistakes that it has made, and I want the people of South Sudan to have a better future. And I'm not alone. There's a lot of Dinka people that criticize. In fact, if you really look closely, most of the critics of the government of South Sudan are actually Dinka people. You have people like Wolden Attack in New Zealand. He's from Tony. He's a critic of government of South Sudan. My own friend and brother, Kerbino Wolagok, who was from Tony, was killed, murdered by this government. And he's a Dinka. There's a lot of Dinka people that are suffering day and night, pointing out the limitation. Yet, our other brothers, they say the government and the Dinka is one and the same. This is completely misleading. This government, the vice president they have Nuers in them, there are Equatorians in them. If you find in the army, there are Equatorians, there are Nuer, there are Chuluk, there is Anuak, there is those of Yao Yao, David Yao Yao from Murle. They are in the government. They are completely consuming the resources. They are depriving the people of South Sudan. It is a clique of individuals from all around South Sudan that want to get themselves rich at the expense of our people. So how is it that the Dinka community is being held responsible by failures of individuals that come from all over the country? Salva Kiir, yes, is a Dinka, but he's not the only Dinka in the government. Riek Machar, is he a Dinka? Wani Iga, is he a Dinka? Mamour, who I just mentioned before, is he a Dinka? Nunu Kumba, who is the speaker in the parliament, is she a Dinka as well? There are so many people in the government that are consuming resources. Obaj is one of the richest titans in Juba. Is he a Dinka? The other Bari guy, what is his name? He's very rich, wealthy, rich person. Is he a Dinka? Is individual from all over the country that came together to benefit from this regime. And the people of South Sudan, whether they are Dinka, they are Nuer, they are Chuluk, or they are from Equatoria, they are suffering. So instead of allowing ourselves to be deprived and our own livelihoods to be taken from us, we need to unite our people. We need with truth and fact. And the fact is, the land in South Sudan is our land. It's all of our land. If it is attacked today, it will require all of us to defend it. All of us to defend it. All of us to defend it. Ilemi Triangle, which is now being taken by Kenya, it will require all of us to take it back, not Taposa. The same thing with the areas that are being annexed in Yei by Uganda. Will it require the Kakwa and the Kuku to go and bring that land back? It will require all of us. The same thing with the areas in Awil that are being annexed, Mile 14, that is being annexed by North Sudan. It will require all of us, not the people of Awil. So we have to realize that the land is sacred, is all of our land. And every South Sudanese person has a right to settle anywhere in this country, provided that they are living peacefully. So the idea that cattle keepers can go and be attacked in the cattle camps just because they are Dinka, that is completely wrong. And that is unacceptable. So we have to be able to speak the truth because this is our country. It's for all of us to defend it. And we defend it first with ideas, and we defend it also with our own personal sacrifice.
Thank you, Dr. Peter Biar. Welcome, Comrade Deng Matoto, for joining us. They're saying that. So,
thank you, Brother Madis, and thank you, Dr. Peter Biar. You have answered my question.
I think you have a window open on Facebook that I still hear echoing.
And ask more questions. My real name is Miriam S. I think you would know me by now anyway by Facebook, but in Clubhouse here I go by the Tony. I would also like to make a suggestion that you should join Clubhouse in order for you to actually hear a lot of things that are being said about what is going on in Juba, and particularly for the cow keepers and all that kind of stuff. I think it would be fair for you to hear the issues and how people are preaching them in order for you to also give in the help that you wanted it to state it. My last question would have been actually, what do you think would make this government change, or that can better this government a task of your own opinion in your own political space in order for us to move forward? I'll leave that there. If you want to answer, you may answer. If you don't want to answer, it's okay. I just want also to allow other South Sudanese to ask their questions and move forward. Thank you very much. I'm going to move myself down.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Madis, for bringing it up. Yeah.
Thank you, Sister Tony. And before you answer that, Dr. Peter Biar, Denkam and True Africa, you guys managing the club, we have a lot of people there want to come up. Before we do that, answer that, let me give this chance to Simon Abui. Dr. Peter Biar Ajak, Simon Abui is one of the member of the NAS, and also he's one of the member of Victoria that we would like to give this chance to him to hear from him. Simon Abui, if you can hear my voice, you can go ahead with your question.
First, let me say thank you, Mr. Dengere, for bringing me up. And thank you, Brother Truly Africa. Thank you, Chief of Propaganda, Mr. Abraham Majak. And let me also pass my greeting to the speaker, Alo Victor Biar Ajak. Let me say this first in Swahili. There's a word that, for those of you who live in Kenya, you may know it very well. It is said, Mtoto ya Simba is Simba. And you can translate it. If you don't know, you can ask somebody to translate it for you, or you can Google it, it will tell you. Mtoto ya Simba is Simba.
Hey, Simon, now, we have Matoto here in our studio. Take Matoto. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You already started like that now.
Go ahead, Simon.
Anyway, go ahead. Yeah, well, Ajalana Der Kelly, I don't know. Yeah, what I want to say is this. Actually, I'm not going to say a lot because the way that I see that he already cited his community, Alo Bor community. So there's nothing good will come. The Equatorial community will benefit from it. So I'm just here to inform all the Equatorians not to waste their time to come up here and ask any question from Dr. Biar Ajak, because Dr. Biar Ajak will never produce any single answer that will benefit them. Because he already made up his mind. He called himself an opposition, but in fact he's not an opposition. Also the Okuma within. This is the fifth column. He just come out, now, if you guys see, most of the people that are arrested, they were tortured, all kind of things to them. But did they torture Dr. Biar Ajak? Biar Ajak Mao at the Rajal Gabiliata James Host. So when you marry a daughter of the big fish, who will touch you? It was just like
Simon. I thought
okay?
that you should
So
answer.
I just want to let Equatoria know, don't even try to come up here and ask any question. Let them discuss and we'll respond to them accordingly after their show. Thank you.
Okay, let me ask just 1 second. Simon,
and I will just drop myself.
Yeah, hold on. Simon, you know, we are so Sudanese, we have to be honest. So we are discussing the issues of cattle products with the community. We are not actually discussing the whole about the government. But personality, sometimes we have to respect. Uncle Biar, Uncle Ajabuda is a governor himself and is a fighter. There's no question about that. All of them, they are fighters. We have to respect the family sometimes. I'm not condemning you, but it wasn't the right thing for you to go that way. And if you are mobilizing Equatoria and you are opposition to the government, I thought you want to rule South Sudan. Thomas Cirillo want to become a president of South Sudan. And those of opposition like Biar and the government, somebody in the government, they will be citizen of Thomas Cirillo. But if you decided to say that, it's okay to you. But I will invite whoever is ready to come up.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you, Dengabit. Let me respond to Simon Abu very quick. Simon Abu, you called me earlier that I'm a chief of propaganda, but it seems like you are the chief of propaganda of NAS. You're supposed to come up here to have a question instead of personal assault. So that can tell that you know Simon Abu. You should be polite, professional way when you talk. So I will leave that way. So Dr. Biar Ajak, I don't think you can answer anything there.
No, there is something I can add. I can add very little. First of all, what we have to understand as people of South Sudan is that we are going nowhere. This is the only country we have, South Sudan. We have to either fix it or it's going to be in mess the way it is. There is no way we can avoid each other. We are the people that God has given this land, and it's our responsibility to make sure that this country moves forward. We have to be able to communicate with one another, and we have to be able to speak the truth. Just because I come from Boer community does not mean that if I see that there is something that is happening that is unfairly targeting members of Boer community, then I do not comment on it because I will be accused of bias. I have to be able to speak the truth, whether my community is affected or not. And the reality, as I was saying before, is that you know the situation in Jonglei. I don't know what Abui is disputing. Is he disputing that there is flood in Jonglei and that the land is wet? And now people are evacuating, not to leave alone taking people back and their properties. Is he disputing that there is insecurity in Jonglei, which is being orchestrated by the Murle? Is he disputing that? Is he disputing how the notion in the Constitution that land belonged to the communities came about? Does he not know the history of how that article got into the Constitution? Is he disputing anything in regard to that? Is he disputing also that the government has the right to regulate the use of land in South Sudan? Is he disputing that? Is he disputing that the presidential decree that President Salva Kiir issued, that the cattle must leave Equatoria, is unconstitutional? Is he disputing that? He's not disputing any of these things. So he's leaving the debate with the facts of the debate to then say, just because I'm a Dinka, that somehow I must always side with the Dinka, which is incorrect. If it is the issue of me being tortured in prison, torture is not just only when a knife is put in your body or when you are whipped. There is psychological torture, like sleeping in a room with no window where light is turned on for 2 weeks, turned off again for 2 weeks. when you are taken out in the middle of the night, taken to the Nile, blindfolded, and the guns are shot around you as if you are being executed. There are different ways in which torture happens. So he has no idea. I mentioned before, those who were slaughtered in the Blue House. I keep talking about individual. Dengakon from a will, he was killed. He was a captain in the Dinka. He was taken to Luri and hacked to death. He's a Dinka. Carbino World, after he was released, was killed. Abraham Majak Maliap is a Dinka. He was killed. Dao Makoy, he was a Dinka. He was killed. How many can I mention? So we have to look at the facts and discuss the facts, not just come up with like crazy propaganda, trying to think that Dinka, there is no community. Dinka is not a political party. Dinka is not a state. Dinka is a community, and there are individuals in Dinka that completely disagree on anything and everything. But it's a community. So we should not try to like attack communities. It's like the same, it would be like saying that all the body are in us. Are all the body in us? Is Wani Iga not in Juba with Salva Kiir in the SPLM? Is that not the case? So we have to mature so that our politics even mature, and so that we are able to talk to our people and encourage them to become politicized in an authentic way that can allow this country to move forward, not to just attack people based on personality. I was in Juba. I was almost killed in Nairobi if I was not lucky to get a US visa. Was James Hood or Ajaguda able to stop those people? They had no the power to stop them. So the state is a state, and the Minister of National Security that has been pursuing me is not even a Dinka. It's Mamur. He's from Lotuko community in Eastern Equatoria. So you have a state with individuals in it, Nuer, Dinka, Chuluk, whatever. All of them are there. Odonyi is there. He's part of the government. There's no one that is not there. It's a clique of individuals. So to answer the question that my sister asked, the last question she asked, I have been talking for a very long time about elections, that we need to have elections in South Sudan, because I don't believe in violence. And I don't believe if our people continue to fight and kill each other, that somehow we will be able to change the regime in Juba. The regime in Juba will always benefit when people use violence, because it is also one of the entities that is using tribalism to divide our people and to hold on to power. And when people like Abui come and accuse Dinka to be the state, is actually doing the bidding of the regime in Juba by allowing it to consolidate the Dinka base and use it to remain in power. So we have to be able to leave our people out so that they know, regardless of any regime that comes tomorrow, no one is going to attack the communities. But if you make communities fearful, that you see them as the perpetrators and responsible for the crimes that this regime is committing, then they will be stuck with this regime. So we have to be open-minded, and we have to know that we have to appeal to our people regardless of their tribes and tell them the truth. You tell them they must. So you want me to say that the Dinka cattle in Equatoria must leave Equatoria? Why must they leave Equatoria? Is Equatoria belong only to Equatorian? Is that the way? So should the oil in Upper Nile be left only to the people of Upper Nile to consume it? Will no one want that oil? Should it just be left to Upper Nile? It's all the oil of South Sudan. You never heard one time any Dinka in Upper Nile or any Nuer in Upper Nile saying that the oil in Upper Nile is ours. So how is it that the resources in Equatoria should belong to Equatoria? Where does that logic even come from? They all belong to all of us. If it is land, it belongs to all of us. If it is gold, it belongs to all of us. It does not belong to any community.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Peter Biar Ajak. Okay, Truly Africa, you are moderator. I will give you this chance, and then I will get back. I will go back to the studio. I have one of the Deng Matoto is here with me. We can give him a chance. So, Truly Africa, do you want to say something or?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Python. Yeah, first of all, I will appreciate my brother Peter Biar for creating time to come and talk about these cattle issues with the host community. in eastern Equatoria, especially the incident which happened on 27th of February in MAGWI County. Yeah, that is what I can give, and also appreciate Python Badit and Brother Denkamis for having time to create this topic, and people have to debate and ask questions and see what will be the possible solution that all of us can get and live in harmony. And our solutions, we have to compare living of cattle keepers, equatorial land to their homeland. Are there disadvantages or advantages? Government have kept out the order. Is that order effective or not? And if not, what are the reasons? And if it is effective, is there security that will guide those cattle keepers peacefully not to be attacked on their way up to their location? And if there is security, and where is that area where these people are being located to? If Jonglei is flat, they are put it. Then I always say these people are also to be taken to Lagos State, the part of Yarul. They can live resided in Gualia, that is our aerial county, peacefully, without having issues. If Equatorians, and this topic has actually been one of the biggest issues that fuel this tribal politics of identity, and this idea of saying that all government belong to Dinka. I'm glad you have heard how they speak, Brother Biar, and I will beg you to have the time, open yourself to Clubhouse, download the app, and then join this debate. You will hear more from this opposition outside here, and you to your opposition. You will hear the language you people are preaching, whether you are speaking in one voice or you are having a divergent language, of which it will hinder your achievement or your agenda as opposition of that country. This is what I can tell you point blank without any fear of contradiction. To this level, I also have to advise my brothers up here who want to ask questions and speak on the topic. Let's always stick to our topic. Let's leave alone the issues of what happened in Blue House, who has been tortured and who has not been tortured, what happened in the government. The only concept here we bring government in is the insecurity between the cattle keepers and the host community of MAGWI. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Tropical. Let me get microphone back to, I will, and also Dr. Peter Biar Ajak, we have Deng Dayok join us in Clubhouse. He will ask your question later on. Let me give this chance to Brother Deng Matoto. Deng Matoto, welcome. Fadal. No, hang on, let me unmute you. Yeah, go ahead.
Am I clear? Are you viewers, anybody in this show listening to me? That's my
What
first
happened?
question.
Your network is breaking.
Anybody listening to me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I see Biar Ajak doing his head like this. It seems like he's listening to me. So if you are not listening to me, say that I'm not listening
Yes,
to you, because this is a part of the disease that's killing people in Sudan. Somebody will say that I know, and you don't know. Biar do his head like this and he say that I'm clearly listening to me. What about you, host? Madid, are you listening to me as well? If you don't listen to me, don't promote yourself, say no. If you listen to me, say yes.
Can you hear me, Deng Matoto, can you hear me?
Very clearly, and you can even see my hand that I'm demonstrating that I'm seeing you clear.
Okay, good. Okay, good. I can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, my brother. Nacha po jodin kipal penyen kena ginu bukan?
He's okay.
He's okay. Brother Madid. Kadang ajak tin ngajak God kadang namalaka eagle. We show do on Leg State Media. Kibana we move kada from Leg State Media to Eagle. Any question you can back ang bear back clear bajal jam. Yakbanan jal kada from Leg State
Okay,
Media to Eagle Media.
Okay, Dave Metodo, I will answer your question later on. And second, people in Clubhouse that say that we have people who don't speak Dinka. Can you speak Dinka? I mean English or Arabic? And your question, I will call you later after the show, and then I will answer you.
Okay, you talk, my brother.
Yes, yeah, okay, go ahead.
First of all, I'm very happy. I greet you in my 10 hand because this is 11. There is no way that I can join them to be 10 because on the right hand I'm holding the phone. So this is 11. I greet you, my brother Madid from Leg State Media or whatever show tonight, Eagle Media. And our lovely brother, the young guy, we are the generation. We are proud of you that you are our generation. You pursue your education, you became a doctor. Regardless, I don't care about criticism. Those who criticize you, they are still have 1 semester, 2 semester to complete to become a doctor. That is our characters as a Sudanese. In Kakuma, a white man in the hospital, they call him a doctor. So what is wrong with somebody love with 1 semester and 2 semester to become a PhD holder? You are our doctor in our generation. So don't mind about that. Don't mind about that. Brother Madid, whatever your show is tonight, I am very humble. And I want to give you appreciation for what you are doing to your community. I know you personally. I know your twin, Matit. I know your mom. And those who are going to read the comment, I'm not good in Tongmonjang, but I broken Tongmonjang. I keep writing the WAN Kumato Yodit when I Yodit. Call me. And I apologize. Let me not consume the time, but let's go to the text. I want to appreciate your view. And first of all, let me introduce myself before I talk. My name is Deng Ngorde. My name is Deng. My middle name is Ngor. My last name is Deng. I am from Somal Bargazal. Ading Awil. If you take a plane from Juba to Awil, then land, if you want Deng Mutoto, ask where is Awil is. You will be shown to the Mosalat. And when you reach the city called Wanjok, that's where I came from. I'm from Wanjok, Awil. I'm residing in the United States of America with my 2 brothers. Madid know, maybe Dr. Ajak don't know. Maybe you will know one. My older brother is Mayom Ngorde. I am the younger, and my younger brother is called Chawij English. Nyal Makadi. becoming with English. I'm not I'm not the one giving him that name or my mom or my dad. It was Dr. John Garang give my younger brother name in a place called Panyudo. Video bito Malaga Yuen, if you guys follow Malaga Yuen the Zol Buta Moral. Jana Sakair, Ulabus Gumashat Amr, Jesh Alamr, Uya Masul, Beden Kalang, Menekongor, Jogabudigan, Uya Rukbawel, Dr. John Gallo, you are Gdam Yalde, and you are Chawi English. As I'm talking with you, at the moment I'm talking with you guys, we are in 2 apartments, living with those guys that I mentioned, my older brother and my younger brother. I'm the second boss. Our dad is the one who took us, told my mom that he divided us with mom. Told my mom remain with the 3 girls and I'm living with the 3 boys because of Maram. Maram Bishil Nuzwan and you don't kill them. Bishil Awalat and he will kill them. So my dad told my mom, remain with 3 girls, I'll live with 3 boys. Umal ana bas ma da isu mobil farm. Wala bongo. No, I'm coming with it. I'm going with my 3 boys.
We're running out of time. So
we came back. We are lost boys. And one day my book will be out. Loma Pizol Basarni and Basal Dictora Jagi Patagle Kawaja. You will write my book called The Suffering of 3 Brothers. My dad was killed in bed with an Luis Labong Lajuri. That is my background. I am now in Rochester, Minnesota, close to Mayo Clinic, the big hospital, with my brother. I am coming now to the point, Madit.
Okay, 1 minute.
My point is this now. I want to tell Junubin Bil Arabic, and I want to tell them that our elders confuse us completely. And if my dad was alive, I would have told them, I would have told my dad, you are confused like the rest. The panel, the people, the viewing that are watching this show tonight, South Sudanese 64 tribes from 16 minimum of 40 down. I cannot mention your mom, but your dad confused you. I want us as a 64 South Sudanese 40 below downward that our people, our fathers, our elders confuse us. And I want to say one message. Dr. John Garang said, we are going to liberate this country and we are going to become one and we are going to be confused. But Jeshalamar, the young kid that I call Waniga, when I caught Riagamachar, give Yal Sukar, I did it by purpose. When we grow old, when we confuse, they will take over.
Thank you. Thank you so much, brother.
I have one question for you now, Madit, as a host.
Okay.
There is somebody who called Abui that I hear before, condemning Dr. Ajak, that Ajak, he married Beni Abita James Host, Wabu to Kuma. And most of the propaganda in this show, Bugulu, Loabuk, Ukuma Bita Salpakir, It's above mood. My question is this.
Okay,
I'm not
he left.
denying that.
He's not here.
I'm not
So,
denying that. Hold on. I'm not
Simon,
denying that Dr. Ajak did not marry Beni Abita Jamesos. Yes, Mia Pimia. Even ism Mitamara Bito ism Nyaos, ism. If you guys
okay,
don't know, I know what I'm talking about. Marabita Ajak
yeah,
is Anton Jamesos. Jamesos, Yahoo, at the moment I'm talking with you, is the labor minister. Hukuma Bita Salfakir. The father
then,
of Dr. Ajak is Ajak Gudo from Twitch, Umas
then,
division. Hold on.
can you hear me?
What,
No, listen to me, then, Matoto, listen to me. Then, can you hear me? Then, Kamis, then, Matoto. Konapinda. So, topic, we need to go out. No, we need to go back to our discussion. So, in Tonya, topic that we are mocking, the king kakabo ya below the mandate. So, let me go back to, there's a lot of people are waiting. So, you can't coach, you coach. So I will bring you back. Thank you, my brother. Thank you. So there are a lot of people who are won. Yeah. So thank you so much, Deng Matoto. Let me go back to people who are who is next.
Yeah, this is what I want.
And before I give the let me hang on, Deng Kamis. Let me give a chance to Dr. Peter Biar Ajak to comment, and then I will let Deng Matoto go.
I think I just want to thank Deng Mutoto for his time and for it seems like he would really want to reminisce and say some things from the back. But of course, I appreciate all his comments. I don't think there is much I can say from there. So let's move the conversation forward.
Okay, thank you. Deng Matoto, I will get back to the discussion. This is a very important topic. Another time or that the mandate. So this is a very serious topic that we are discussing, and there are a lot of people who want to ask a lot of questions to Dr. Peter Biar Ajak. Let's give these people a chance to talk. So for those of you in Clubhouse, please, I would like you guys to ask specifically question 1 or 2, and that's it. So we are running out of time. So go ahead, Truly Africa or Decomis.
Yes, what I wanted to say in the down here, we are reading the comments, so there are a lot of fun. So you keep going. If there's any question, we can forward it to Dr. Biar later on. Now, David, you're welcome. You can talk to your colleague later what you are facing here in Clubhouse. Wilson, go ahead. Open your mic and your turn. Wilson, talk.
Yeah. Before Wilson, I just want to let you know that the topic is what all of us should follow. I mean, and for that reason, this topic happened. The incident happened twice or more than even 3 times.
So
that's what you need to articulate from it, and then give us suggestions or solution. What do you think? And if there is any questions you want to pose to Peter Biar, then you can pose your question to him. And all of you here on the podium also, there are other people who will question you in regard to your presentation. Thank you. You can take the floor, Wilson.
Wilson, go ahead. I can. Maybe we will get another, but if the speaker is done, then we can open it up because we don't want to come and fight on the stage here.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Deng. Thank you, Washington, and Dengi, and Napoleon, and those who are down in Tulia. I think I just come here. Welcome, Dr. Yeah, the issue of cow has been discussed in last year, November. And thank God you came today. And one question was asked before, are you familiar with the so-called clubhouse? And you say no. Welcome. A lot of things have been said, but the issue of cow has become a very problem. You talk about constitution of Sudan, which is not going to be affected by Equatorial people. They say they need Dinka cow now. Not only Dinka cow, even the body of late Sherman, they want to take it out. It has been said here in this forum called Clubhouse. And I'm blaming some of you, the actors from the Dinkas or opposition, who are keeping quiet, trying to bring people together. But it is not a case. There are a lot of doctors come here, Dr. Lam, Dr. Moon, Dr. Baswala, Dr. whatever. And so the issue has been discussed, and you talk about the constitution, but as we speak, we know there are already 5 took place. The capital keeper were being provoked, I think 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and then they retaliate back. So the thing are coming up, I don't know, you come from the same region where the cattle keeper came from, and you talked before, trying to talk about constitution, but constitution of South Sudan says it did not offer us the constitution. What do you think the people they make up their mind? Even today, they have talked about that. That's one thing. The other thing is opposition and government. You are criticizing the government and you don't like the government. That's one thing. But for your knowledge, that is to say, they don't consider all these opposition. They see them as inspired, and you say it somewhere before. And I am glad that Yoki is here. But here is another question. Are you familiar with the book, or whatever they call it, brought out by Dr. Carter in Canada? If you are familiar, this book has become a new Bible, has been used, saying that the Dinka had a plan to occupy the land. So are you aware of that book? If you are aware, what it is? Because this book is now the most problem has been used against the cattle keepers or against the Dinka president in the United States. So that's my another question about that book. You are familiar. The third one is we talk about election before and legal violence, but a lot of opposition, those who are opposing government, a lot of people want to hear the word election, and that they cannot go for alternative. So are you continuously, do you still have the contact with the Congress that you spoke them a year ago or 2 years ago, I don't know? Are you still have a contact, or you still have that kind of pushing to an election? So these are my questions, guys. I will stop with that.
Brother Madid, the network was really bad, so I could not hear a lot of what my brother said there. He asked me about some book, but I didn't even hear the title of the book or what his specific question was. So if you got what he said, can you just summarize for me briefly?
Are you aware? So he's asking you about the article that written by Dr. Carter Becker.
No, I'm not. I'm not aware of it.
It's actually a paper. It's like a position paper where you write a position paper about research. That's what she wrote, and we can forward it to him. I have it.
Okay. No, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. So what about the other question that he has?
I didn't really get. Can you summarize basically for me? Because his network was really bad on my part.
Okay. Wilson, can you repeat your question? Clarify those very quick, please. And speak aloud.
I repeat myself. I don't know. Are you hearing me?
Yeah,
yes,
speak up.
I'm hearing you now. The problem is it cuts in the middle, but just try to, just Summarize.
My question was, you talk about the Constitution of South Sudan, where they give all citizens the right to go anywhere. But it is the case of today, as we've been talking for the last week, 3 months in Clubhouse. So what is your solution? Because I don't think these people of Equatoria, they are not buying Constitution. They are saying the cattle keeper has to move out from Equatoria. That's one thing. Another thing was some kind of article or wrote by Dr. Carol. She is a Canadian, and I think Brother Deng is going to speak about that later if there's challenge came out to challenge that one. So are you aware? If you are not aware, I think you need to go and visit that book has been used as a tool, saying that it is the plan of the Dinka who want to occupy the land of Victoria. So that's two questions. And the third, why you are absent on the social media, seen a lot of doctors, even from Africa, they are here on the social media, talking to the people. Also, Dr. Lamakol, being Dr. whoever, they were here. So where are the doctors of the thinkers? Even Dr. and sold out 2 days ago by you. Where are you guys? Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dato.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, as I said, I'm not aware of the book by Carol, but based on the summary that you have given, it seems like she's suggesting that Dinka has some strategic plan to occupy the land of Equatoria. Well, what I can say about this is that that is not true. I don't think there is any strategic plan where Dinka people have sat down and said that they are going to occupy the land in Equatoria. What happened was during the war, there was displacement that was caused by the conflict and by the intensity of the conflict wherever it happened. And when that happened, people moved to areas where they could find refuge. This is, I think, the first time where Dinka people really began moving to Equatoria in a very large number. And that happened not because of choice, but it was created by necessity of the war that moved people there. And we know from various academic studies that when people have been displaced and they leave the area where they were staying, it's very difficult for them to come back. This has nothing to do with whether they moved to Equatoria, but even now we are finding out with many of us that moved to the United States, to Canada, to Australia, and even to North Sudan or even to Egypt. It's difficult once people have settled for them to return. And also because the country, since independence, has not had stability. Economy has been in complete state of chaos for a very long time. Insecurity has always been a problem. So they have nothing to return back to. So they continue to remain wherever the conflict displays them to. That is nothing that is strategic. It's not planned by anyone. It would be like saying that it would be like Kenyans saying that the South Sudanese people have a strategic plan to come and occupy Kakuma and not move away from there, because our people have been in Kakuma since the early 1990s. And the reason they are there is not because of any strategic plan. You find them in Nakuru, you find them in Nairobi, you find them everywhere. There's nothing that is strategic about it. You find it in Uganda. It's just the reality of conflict and migration. There's a lot of scholarship in this regard that anyone can read from around the world. I fear that these things, and if Carol indeed is an educated person, then I fear that these people are trying to use narratives of this kind to mobilize people in Equatoria and incite them against the Dinka people. And I think it's based on a very faulty analysis of the fundamental problem that is facing South Sudan. There are those that are arguing and defining this conflict from ethnic perspective as a struggle of tribal supremacy. And I don't think this is the case. That would be a complete misreading of the crisis. It has nothing to do with the tribes of South Sudan. It's basically about individuals that have forgotten what they were fighting for and have been diverted by appetite for resources and for power, and they are not loyal to anyone. They're not loyal to their own tribes, and they're not loyal to any ideas. They're not even loyal to God. They're loyal to themselves. And if we then define this crisis from ethnic, tribal perspective, then we are allowing these individuals to win and to continue to occupy positions in the government for which they will not move the country forward. So that analysis is completely wrong. You find that if indeed today we are able to resolve the conflict of flood and insecurity, then you will find that a lot of these cattle keepers will have no problem moving back to Jonglei and to moving back into the Sud area. But you cannot expect them to move in the current situation where the land is flooded. Finally, you invited me to join this clubhouse. I will look into it and I will look to engage. You asked where the Dinka doctors are. I cannot speak for the rest of them, but I'm sure they are there, and maybe they have not been invited. And there's a lot of them that are quite active. And you don't even really need doctors. It's just any individuals that are active in South Sudanese politics, because just having the PhD or anything like that doesn't give us any special knowledge or any unique advantage from which we can analyze and discuss political issues that are affecting our people. I think anyone that has informed opinions can very much engage, and we have a lot of individuals that are active in all areas that can be invited to have this discussion. My fear is people that have been in opposition for long and that have not succeeded. I feel there is a frustration that is growing to which people are losing basic principles. And in the state of continuing to talk about the ideas or what they have to offer the country, they are being short-sighted, and they're blaming the failure on different communities and inciting their communities against those communities. I don't think that will work for them either, because even now with the conflict that happened in MAGWI, it's not just the cattle keepers alone that are going to be killed. It's everybody that will be killed, including the farmers. So there is no winner in this. And this is why I keep saying that violence is not the way to deal with our situation. And we don't want to create a cycle in South Sudan where a government is violently overthrown. The countries where it has happened has always led to disorder and sometimes a complete state collapse, as what happened in Somalia. And our society is very fragile. Our government is very fragile. So what we need to do is to put enormous pressure on the government to make sure that elections are organized. I think if the elections are organized, South Sudanese people are capable of expressing their will. And I don't think that there is anyone that has monopoly to steal the results of the election, especially if we engage the UNMISS to be the one responsible for providing security and for securing the ballot areas. I wrote an article about this several weeks ago, in which I argue that we should keep the number of polling stations small. Right now, the mandate of UNMISS was renewed just 2 days ago. And the force level was maintained at the same level it has been, 17,000 troops, 2,100 policemen. That is nearly a total of that's over 19,000 armed personnel available in the country. We have 79 counties in South Sudan, if you include Abyei. So 79, and we agree that in each county there are going to be 5 polling stations. Then we are going to have a total of 395 polling stations. And if we have 30 well-trained, well-equipped UNMISS peacekeepers deployed in each polling station, you will need 11,850 soldiers to be deployed in the polling station. There's already 17,000. So that will leave at least 6,000 troops that can be organized into mobile unit that can patrol areas that are highly contested, and they will also provide security for candidates so that they can move around and sell their ideas. So elections can be done. And I think if elections are done, South Sudanese have seen that since independence, nothing has changed. All the aspirations of the people have been squashed by the regime in Juba. So they know, and this is why they said during the national dialogue that they want a new beginning that does not include President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar. And I think if elections are organized, they will say that. They will manifest that. So if they were able to say that in the national dialogue that was completely being run by the national security, with national security agent deployed at each meeting, and they were able to say that there should be a new beginning that does not include Riek and Salva Kiir, how is it that they will not be able to do that through voting in a secret ballot at polling stations that are protected by the UNMISS? So I think the best option is for us to push the leadership in Juba, and also for us to be very active, demanding that these elections should take place. And there is not a lot that need to happen. What we need first is the amended constitution to be endorsed. It has already passed the second reading in the parliament, so we need to come back for the third reading to be passed and be fully endorsed. Once that happens, then there is a number of laws that need to be reformed. These include the National Security Act, include the Police Act, and by the way, the draft of this act have already been prepared by the National Constitutional Amendment Committee. And then you need to then have a revision of the National Security, the National Election Act, and then you also need to have a revision of Political Parties Act. Once these acts are modified and brought in conformity with the peace agreement, then the other thing that is left is the issue of census. Now, I don't believe that census can be done within the time frame that is left. So what we can do is, in the statistics, there are ways this is done. You basically do use estimates to then project how the population has changed since the last census was conducted. And that can be done. We can use the same geographical constituencies that existed during the 2010 regional election, and we can build on those. And then we move ahead, do the election. The National Election Act, as it is now, allow for South Sudanese people to vote who are not within the country. So those in the refugee camps can still vote. Those in the diaspora can still vote. It's already in the act as we speak. And then the act already as it is calls for results to be announced at the level of the polling station. So these polling stations that will be protected by the UN, once the voting is complete, then the result will be counted immediately, and the president of the UN peacekeeping force, the president of the representative of the political parties, and the president of the election monitors from the region and from the international community. And then the result in each area are announced. And then they can be aggregated at the state and the national level to determine who wins, say, for example, the presidential election and so forth. So elections can be done. The notion that we can violently overthrow the government is part of the problem that is hurting our people, because then people try to be creative. How can they gain support? And then they resort to very cheap tactics like using tribalism or regionalism. So now you see that Dinka is a problem. Soon you will hear that the problem is actually Bahr Ghazal. And all of these are tactics to divide people because people are desperate on a formula for which they can win power. Why do that? Why not allow for elections? Do elections so that people can contest with ideas, so that we see what is it that these people are saying that they will do. We evaluate this given their record, given level of their experience, can they actually deliver? And then we allow people to vote. And if the election declares that Mr. X or Mrs. Y has been the one that is elected, we celebrate and we move on. And we wait until the next election, because once the elections are there, then we know that there is a time period when the election will have to be held again. And then there will be, of course, term limits. So if this person has won 2 terms, they have to step down automatically and allow other people to contest. That is the only way we can build our country. And that way, you will not just be appealing to your own tribe, because to win a majority, you have to appeal to a broader South Sudanese population to see that you represent ideas that can have a meaning in their lives. That way, we can build national unity and move our country forward, rather than saying that we're going to arm ourselves, we come to Juba, we kill people, and we overthrow the government. That cannot help us build our nation up. And we should always be thinking about how do we build things, not how to destroy them. So I don't think this whole nonsense of violence is going to deliver anything. And even I suspect those who are carrying arms, they know it. They know it. And what they're actually aiming for is basically to negotiate and to join the government and be given like a piece of the cake so that they join the government. It has now become the only way. If you want to be in the government, then you must rebel, kill people, and then negotiate so that you get a position. We have to change that logic entirely. People have to be given power by consent, by people, based on a contract. What is it that they're going to do for me that will improve my life? And then creating institutions for which these people are held accountable. That is the only way we can move South Sudan forward.
Thank you, Dr. Biar. Let me go back. Next question, please. Tongjang and Usas Dengi Dayok will be next. So Tongjang, go ahead, ask your question. True Africa is, you guys go ahead. Please,
Hello, are you guys hearing me?
yes.
Yes, you are clear.
Yeah, let them you go first, and then I will be after them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tongjang. Okay, Usas Dengi Dayok, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, my brother Abraham Medin Majak, Dengaran, Wilson Tongjang, and Napoleon, and whoever he is in the room. I greet Dr. Peter Biar Ajak, who is the guest speaker in the program today. And I sincerely appreciate his contribution towards the realization of change in our republic. And I admire the courage and the passion that he speaks with. May God bless all his efforts to realize the dream of change in the Republic of South Sudan, together with those who also believe in bringing change to the suffering people of South Sudan. I was reluctant to speak because I was not here right from the beginning to listen to Dr. Biar, the way he addressed the topic. I came in the middle and I got the message from the middle. However, I was able to ask my brother, Abraham Medin Majak, to update me on some of the points that were covered by Dr. Ajak, and he gratefully did it, and I truly appreciate that. We are talking about cattle herders in Greater Equatoria, and this is a big problem right now. In fact, there are cattle herders in Greater Equatoria region. They are moving there with their cattle, and they are also believed to be carrying weapons. And so they move around with their cattle and with their weapons, and they are also causing damage to the farms and to the produce of the local people in the area. But this issue is also exaggerated. Earlier, Wilson Donacour talked about the book written by Carl Berger. And in that book, it is stated that those cattle weapons, those cattle keepers with their weapons are not actually civilians. It is stated there that they are soldiers in civilian clothes, and that they are actually weapons against the local people used by the Dinka, what they describe as the Dinka-led government in that book by Coral Berger. I believe that Dr. Biar is a reader. I believe he got the book and he went through it and he got the idea that is in the book. So many people have taken it that way from that book, and they have already made up their mind, and they don't want to listen to the other side of the story. And today, some voices were heard calling upon the local people or the natives in Equatorial region to collect money and buy arms and kill those cattle headers or shoot them. We've received this message today. So this one, you can see it is a problem. The government of the Republic of South Sudan tried to find a solution to this, but the solution was not practical. President Kiir issued a decree in 2017 asking all the cattle owners to go back to their original land with their cattle. But there was no follow-up on this decision by the head of the state in order to ensure that all the cattle owners, all the cattle herders in Greater Equatorial region were moved back to their area. And then time went on and people kept quiet. But soon after the book or the paper written by Dr. Carol Berger titled Ethnocide as a Tool of State Building, South Sudan and the Never-Ending War, this issue was brought up, and that's why people are talking about this issue today. 2 weeks ago, there were so painful incident that happened in Eastern Equatoria State, in the villages of Panyakwara, Agoro, and MAGWI County, and also Abara village. We saw very horrible pictures on social media, and those acts were believed to be acts carried out against the civilians in the area by the cattle herders. But I stated earlier that they are exaggerated, and that there are some brothers in the opposition, especially the opposition that is called Soma. They are using this as a political propaganda in order to agitate the natives in the area against their brothers in the other communities, especially the Dinka community. So this one is a problem. But basically, we believe that the existence of cattle herders in the area is not good because they are causing a damage to the farms and to the produce of the farmers in the area. And therefore, it is very logical that those farmers must be asked to go back to their original land so that they don't cause problems to the natives in the area. So 2 weeks ago, I believe, we saw a video in which Honorable Michael McQuaid, the Minister of Information, also the chairman of Boer community, calling on cattle herders to go back to their homeland. And it was like a warning to them. He said to them that you have to go back immediately, because if you did not go back, the government would deploy forces to force you to go back to your original homeland. And that was a step towards the right direction, calling on the cattle herders to go back to their original areas. But just saying that in the media without any tangible action on the ground is not a solution to the problem. We want to see an action taken that these cattle herders are going back. And 3 days ago, I read reports, press reports, that the cattle herders which were involved in the events that took place in MAGWI County were going back to their original land, which was a good development. So the solution to this problem, in my opinion, we have to make appeals, as Michael McQuay started it. We also have to make our own appeal to the cattle headers that exist in the region to go back to their original land in order to maintain peace in the area and let the natives in the Equatorial region continue on with their daily business, especially things like farming, without any problem. This is number one. Number two, the leaders from the community have also to talk to those cattle owners, talk to them in a way that will convince them to go back to their areas, because their existence is causing a big damage to our people there in the region. And not only that, there are other issues that are being said, such as some individuals from communities who are not originally from Equatoria, who have settled in Greater Equatoria. This one is also a subject matter of debate in so many forums, and people speak about this in a way that reflects disunity among the people of South Sudan. So they should also be asked to go back to their original areas in order to avoid any problems in the area. We all believe, and I believe that's what Dr. Peter Biar said earlier, our common belief that South Sudanese are free to live in any corner of the country is no longer something that so many South Sudanese believe nowadays. Because when you say every South Sudanese is free to go and live wherever he wishes to live or wherever he likes or she likes to live, people would look at that one as occupation. So you see South Sudanese are set against each other. And the book I mentioned earlier has contributed to this unity, to ethnic divisions between the people of South Sudan. So these are some three things or 3 points which I believe should be a solution. The community leaders should be very serious to the point that they can force the youth who are rearing cattle in Greater Equatoria to go back to their area, because this one is a serious matter nowadays, and it has actually divided our people, and people are so bitter about this problem. So this is what I think should be done, and if it is done, is the propaganda by the opposition, especially Soma, is what is making this issue look totally different. And also the book written by Carol Berger, which was used by the opposition, and it is taken as if it is a holy Bible. People believe in it so much. And earlier when I was discussing this, I said it honestly that this book is an agenda of setting South Sudanese against each other to hate themselves, and possibly it could lead South Sudanese to what I term as genocide in South Sudan. So this is now the problem, but I believe that these people should be asked to go back to their area. This is what I wanted to add. Thank you very much, Abraham Adib. Thank you, everyone. My greetings to Dr. Biar. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Usas Dengi Dayok. Dr. Biar, do you want to comment on things? Because Dr. Usas Dengi Dayok didn't ask your question, but do you want to reply? And then let me know if you have other, because we are now 2 hours and 16 minutes in, and I would like to take a break.
Yeah, actually, I was hoping maybe we could conclude at some point briefly.
We
15 minutes or so. Look, I thank you, Brother Dengi Dayok. I always appreciate your ideas. I don't have any objection with people appealing to the communities to be calm or to avoid violence or to consider other alternatives to the ongoing fight. But I think at the end of the day, we have to be realistic. You can't appeal to someone to do something that is not in their best interest to do. We mentioned before that the reason why the cattle keepers in Jonglei are not in their home area is because of two main reasons. One is the flood that has displaced people. And you know very well that over the last 2 years, there has been unprecedented level of discharge of water from Lake Victoria into the Nile. And then also up north in MAGWI, and then Jebel Awliya in Khartoum, and then all the way to Aswan high dams. All these dams are blocking the passage of water. So the water then is pushed back, and the area of Jonglei is very low. So then it pushes out, and it moves into homes and into cattle camps, basically submerging everything in water. And this is why you have all these IDPs. It's not just only cattle that are being displaced, but even individuals. And this is why you have this IDP camps that is now in Mangala. The second issue is the issue of violence in Jonglei, perpetrated particularly by the Murle raiders against civilians. They just don't only raid cattle anymore. They kill everyone that they find, whether it is men, women, or children. So those things are happening. So when you tell the cattle keepers who have fled for safety into Equatoria, because the government is not addressing those fundamental issues, then when you tell them that you have to go back where? To go back and live in water? To go back and have their cattle be raided by the Murle? So that is problematic, because if indeed the government has addressed this issue, if there was flood control mechanism that has been deployed, and if indeed the security has been restored, and we have realized with what has happened in Lake State since Governor Rin Tweny Mabur was appointed, we have seen how much Lake State has been pacified, and relative peace has been restored in the state. So we know that if there is interest and if there is political will on the side of the state, the issue of security can be addressed. But that has not been the case in Jonglei. In fact, you see that sometimes there is a deliberate intention to divide people and to ensure that the conflict never ends. So how do you then ask people to go back there? I find that to be problematic. I think the easiest solution is, and I mentioned to you before, that the issue of land should not really be a source of conflict, because only 9% of the land in South Sudan is occupied by people. Only 9% is being used. 91% of land is sitting idle. No one is using it. So how is it that we are fighting over this tiny 9% that we are occupying? Why not expand over to the other land that people are not using? So that should be the real issue. How do we then ensure that the cattle does not move into farms where people are growing crops? That is a legitimate issue to be addressed if the government is unable to address the issue of flood and insecurity. But if they are able to address the issue of flood and insecurity, well and good, then these people will be able to move back. That is very obvious to me. It's like basically forcing the refugees to come back to South Sudan when insecurity has not been addressed. They move because of that. It's just the same thing with any IDPs within the country. They are IDPs and they are there. And the reason why they are there is because of fundamental issues that allowed them to flee in the first place. So that one makes it difficult for me to add my voice to those who are calling cattle keepers to return back to their ancestral land. Because what are they going to return back to? Government can address this issue very fast. They can create mediation mechanism among the people, and they can form committees that can enforce this thing. Now, you mentioned this issue of this book, and I've just realized when you were mentioning, I was not understanding the name, but I know this lady Carol Berger. I think I met her actually in Juba, because if I remember, she used to work for UNMISS. So it's I know this, but this is where the South Sudanese need to be very careful how they take this academic research that is written by foreigners. It sort of reminded me of the article that Alex DeWall wrote several years ago, trying to explain the conflict in South Sudan. Basically, is having to do with money. Or the article that Clemens Pinot wrote in the African Affairs, arguing that the current conflict in South Sudan can be explained because of the class formation and the domination of what she called the military elite, or the military class versus the others. All of these are academics, mostly from outside, coming into South Sudan and trying to make their name in publishing something that can be published. And the more provocative that something is, then the likelihood of getting into a good publishing journal, whether that is a journal article or like a publisher in the form of a book. This is the case, because if you read this is just a bunch of garbage, because no one planned for civilian to be displaced in such a large number into parts of the country. No one planned how Riek Machar was going to exit from Juba in 2016 after the first peace agreement collapsed. Is because of the routes that he took and the ways in which he was pursued by the government, and also the kind of support that he had from other regions within Equatoria that led to basically war coming into Equatoria. Because until the J1 incident of 2016, Equatoria was more or less untouched by the conflict. Conflict was largely concentrated in the Upper Nile region, in Jonglei, in Upper Nile State, and in Unity State. That's where the conflict was largely confined to. But in 2016, when the peace agreement collapsed and Riek Machar fled all the way to Congo, first through Central Equatoria and then into Western Equatoria, that's basically how the war came into Equatoria region. And then later on, Equatoria becoming epicenter, especially around Yei, when Yei became the scene of the heavy fighting. Was that a deliberate thing that was planned by Ambrose Rinyithik and the Jiang Council of Elders? This is a complete nonsense. I myself have, before I was detained, I went to confront the Dinka Council of Elders. I had a meeting with them in Juba where I confronted them and basically told them that it makes no sense for them to be involved in the national political issues, because Dinka, or Jiang as a whole, is not a political party. Jiang is not a government. Jiang is not SPLM. There is SPLM. And those who are members of the SPLM can go and talk on behalf of the party. Government has its own spokesperson. Army has a spokesperson. The same thing, Office of the President has its own spokesperson. The government as a whole has its own spokesperson. I went and met with them. That meeting was chaired by Ambrose himself and Joshua Dow. And I spent 5 hours talking with them. Most of them were having a lot of attack. They're accusing me of being against their interests and all of these things. But I was telling them the truth, that they should limit themselves to cultural issues that can unify the Dinka people, that can help develop and unify the Dinka language, that can help build Dinka literature so that Dinka people are able to expand their culture and their civilization in affairs limited to them. I encourage them to deal with the issues of marriage and how marriage is getting out of control with all these dowry and cows that people are demanding. This is the issues that I ask them to focus on. So it's not every Dinka that is comfortable with this. And I'm very sure many Dinkas, including those who are still within the government, were uncomfortable with the positions of Dinka Council of Elders. And this is why you saw over time they became quiet, because people told them that what they were doing was unacceptable. So for this lady to just go and come from nowhere and to act as if this was something that was planned is completely unacceptable. We know all of this crisis, the crisis in Wow. I went to Wow myself, and I held peace talks with the three communities in Wow, in the Fertit, the Luo, and the Dinka of Mariarbai. I and Bishop Moses Dengbol, the bishop of the diocese of Wow, we held many meetings, and with youth, with women, with different communities, because I remember during the height of the conflict, most of these IDPs, whether they are Fertit, whether they are Luo or Dinka, were displaced, and the only place where they could find refuge during the height of the conflict was at the church. And we went to talk to them so that they understand that this has nothing to do with them. This is a political issue. It's not a tribal issue. So this lady is just basically conflating ideas. And because our people are gullible and they always think that what a foreigner has said has more weight than what the South Sudanese people say, this is why you see that they are resorting and believing this kind of nonsense. And it's very unfortunate. There is no iota of truth in this. There's no such a strategic plan. And we cannot then go and punish the cattle keepers who are there fleeing with whatever little resources that they have, people that have suffered and have lost so much, and say, go back to jungle so that your cattle can die and so that your women can be killed and attacked by the Murle, because we are afraid that this book that has been written by this lady is going to then incite all these people in Equatoria and you will become targets. If anything, there is a need to disprove this. And the government has a responsibility. I know government has always failed, but it has to at some point succeed in doing something. And this is one thing in which they can succeed, to make sure that there is understanding between communities that farm and communities that keep cattle. Because cattle keeping is part of our life, is part of our economy, is going nowhere. The same thing, farming is part of our life, is going nowhere. And instead of saying, because people are inciting people, that the only way is then to get everybody to move back to the ancestral land, then where will South Sudan be? Who will then remain with this idea called South Sudan? Are we giving up on the idea of South Sudan? If you begin to tolerate this thing, the next thing that you will hear is people demanding that there should be a state called Equatoria, independent from the rest of South Sudan. And if that happens, then there will be no such a thing called South Sudan. So we cannot allow our own country to disintegrate before our own eyes. We have to push back. And we have to push back with truth. And we have to push back with facts and tell these people that there is no such a thing. The land is the land of South Sudanese. The land, of course, belongs to the community, but every South Sudanese have a right to use it. Of course, they cannot come and use it with impunity. So then we have to make sure that the cattle keepers also are held accountable and they do not move into the farm. But it also makes no sense to tell them they go and deal with the flood in Jonglei. Let the government fix the issue of flood. And there are ways to do it. They can help with the dikes. They have not been able to do that. Or they can come and build different form of canals. I mentioned before there is drought actually in Eastern Equatoria. There is lack of water there. And all of these problems are effects of climate change. And we know that as a result of the Paris Climate Agreement, there are special funds that have been created and put aside with hundreds of billions in it each year, to which developing countries, particularly hard-hit countries in Africa, can apply for funds. South Sudan can apply for funds from these climate funds because this issue is a direct result of climate change. And they can build infrastructure that can allow communities to cope and to adapt to some of these exogenous shocks that are being produced by climate change. So then we can build a canal where the water can be taken to the area of Pibor, some water can be taken to the area of Eastern Equatoria, so that the issues of drought there are ameliorated, and then the issue of flood will be addressed. And then at least there will be a space for people to move back. But in the current context, it's not possible.
Thank you so much, Dr. Biar Ajak. We are about to come to an end, guys. I will give 15 minutes. We have through Africa, and then we need to give one or two questions to two people, and then our time is up. Through Africa, can you hear me? Or then, so I would like you guys to give a chance to audios so you can ask a question.
Then, Kamis, you can go on. I'm a bit busy here for like 5 minutes. You can move the line.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think the next person is going to be Napoleon. Then Peter will come after him. Peter was here anyway. I think he left.
Dr. Biar, True Africa, and colleagues, Dendirayo, Wilson, Grace, and Peter. Mine will be just a short one. Hopefully, I will try to make it short as possible. But the topic is great, and I appreciate Dr. Biar also in his comment. I'm not sure before I go ahead, can you guys hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you, yes. Can you introduce yourself too so Dr. Biar Ajak can write down your name to take your question?
Okay, you may not know me, but the real name is Peter Yuang, or Yuang Boy. But normally I use my nickname, that's for a long time. I've been holding it's my nickname. So that's why I put Napoleon, because with so many colleagues, they don't know even my real name, but they know Napoleon. In short, the speaker or our guest speaker actually mentioned a lot and took and it's very controversial to our Equatorial. But what I want to mention here is that the question he didn't address the fear, which is to me, in my opinion, the fear of Equatorian. And that fear could be seeing people holding a gun, big gun, for example. If you never see somebody holding the gun, and you come across and seeing other people are holding heavy machine, I think it's legitimate for them to fear that this will happen. In fact, also in a state of fragile like South Sudan, where the gun, or whatever happens, the gun has the power, also that create also a sense of panic to other communities. But Equatorian also, maybe we can't dismiss as well the right that they, at some stage, maybe from the beginning, when those cattle keepers entered to Equatoria, maybe they damaged some of their farms. We can't dismiss that completely. But Peter Ajak put it correctly. He said, if there are such issues, should be managed by local authorities and allocate particular place for cattle keepers to keep the cattle away from the farming area. But also, Peter mentioned that the issue of cattle keepers actually turned to political, and also that's also our Equatorian brothers can deny that, because the issue is actually not about cattle keepers anymore. It's about the presence of Dinka in general, or non-Dinkas, all other South Sudanese. They are not welcome in that area. Today could be a Dinka, tomorrow could be a different tribe. Also, another fear that we should implement also to our Equatorian,
I can't hear the speaker, Brother Madid. Can you hear him?
Is it something for?
Yeah, can you hear him? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so they also have a legitimate fear in the future because they're seeing that Dinka they married a lot, and they have a lot of kids, and then tomorrow the land of Equatoria will be a land of Dinka. So it's a legitimate fear. But how we can give an assurance as a Dinka to them that these things will not happen? That's also that haven't been addressed. In my opinion, we should address that, to give the assurance to the Equatorian that this is what is happening. What my conclusion or my last comment would be, in any state of war, like in South Sudan, okay, South Sudan is not exceptional, okay, and I'll give you an example for Equatorian. I've spoken about this before. In the past, in Uganda, just our neighbor, okay, when I can't remember, is that Idi Amin when was removed from power? Those tribes who used to work with Idi Amin, okay, they were chased to South Sudan. And there is a video there, if someone disputing that. There's a video circulating, I shared it also, that Joseph Lago talk about it. How actually, okay, chase other tribes that divided along South Sudan, from even including some of the Ugandan indigenous tribes. They were chased to South Sudan, okay? But South Sudan, they chased to Equatorial land. But by then, the Equatorian group, they didn't say, no, you have to go back to the war zone. It's a suicide mission when you tell that person, say, go to a war zone. It's a suicide mission. And to Idi Amin. So it was a classical. Another classical example is what we Genovese ourselves. And if I'm not wrong, USA alone have over 2 million, or maybe a million South Sudanese. They were migrated because of the war, not because of their choice. Okay, over half of the population were no. They were living, they were occupying large land, even the land no one lived on it before, and they live there. Northerners, or the Americans, they didn't say that that you come and occupy our land. But the issues, brothers and sisters, it's not about cattle keepers. The issue is more to do with the political, in my opinion, and somebody else can judge me wrongly. But in my opinion, I agree with Dr. Biar. The issue is more political, but also we need to give an insurance. The fact is that some of the Dinkas, brothers, sometimes they behave badly, which is individuals. But those individual things, they will tend to a tribal. They will say, oh, Dinka, look, all of them like that. By the way, for those who never knew the history, Dinka, okay, they've been living with the cattle, in Equatoria long time ago, and they never had these issues. Okay, everything was regulated. So my appeal will be the same what Deng Ayok said. Okay, let's appeal to our community to behave differently to each other, recognizing our fear, recognizing my issues, my concern. Don't just brush it. But acknowledging that you have an issue and work on it. Fearing going to the city and with a huge gun, okay, it's not acceptable as well. Fearing you're going to come occupy my land with this huge population is also my concern. You give me insurance, say, hey, look, I'll go back. But Juba, it was occupied by the Kabul long time ago. They come and settle, they come and live and work in Juba and everything. But they never took a land. They never kill people like that, the way they present. But the issue is very complex because there's agenda that driven for the whole South Sudan not to be united, in my opinion, and I strongly believe that. There is forces behind who are working day and night. They don't want people, South Sudan, to recognize themselves as one nation. They want to see themselves as a tribe. This is what has been happening. Even if I'm wrong, just let somebody go back during the war. Dinka was subjected, okay, to such a similar treatment that everything, oh, Dinka is there, the one doing this. A lot of Dinka were killed, and no one talked about it. But we took it lightly because we said it is the cause of the war, the independence of South Sudan. And we are still independent. The same thing when it happened in 1992 in Equatoria, there was a lot of massacre, okay, simply because Thomas Shiruri left. Okay, the same thing in Malakal. Okay, Malakal also Nuer were killed badly simply because there's a guy also came to Malakal and occupied. I forgot his name. But also
the Valiant, 30 seconds. We are running out of time. 30
so
seconds.
what I'm trying to emphasize here, I wanted people to look at the issues different in different ways because our nation will never move forward. And even we're talking about the government to be changed. How are we going to change it? And who is going to occupy it? The same mind or the same people that are thinking like this? Of course, we will not have a future. Thank you. I think I took so long, but I appreciate all the speakers and especially our guest speaker, Peter Biar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Peter Biar, you will respond. Let me give those people and you note their question down, and then you will respond at one. The next then comes who's next? And guys, let us time 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. 2 to 3 minutes. We have run out of time.
The next question is Peter Mian. Peter Mian, if you are there, activate your mic.
Yeah, 2 to 3 minutes, and then we will end. If you guys continue the clubhouse, you can continue, but I will end up the show. Peter Biar has been here for almost 3 hours.
I'm in the middle of work.
Okay, and then move to next.
Let's move on to how you say your name, authority or whatever name you call your name, and I can't even call your name.
Thank you.
Whatever it is.
It's not whatever it's called, Odysseus, sir. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the chance. Really, to get to the point, I'm just appalled by what Mr. Peter Pierre. First of all, I want to say greeting to you all, and greeting to, what is it called? Eagle, South Sudan Eagle Media. Just for him to dismiss points on land issues and then giving it mathematical numbers in percentage, say 9% of the land has been, and people where they live in, but it's not the point. But the focus here is when he even mentioned that it's not allowed, like for Equatoria, to separate or to be a nation of itself. I don't know if Mr. Peter aware that Equatoria is a region by itself since, if you look at it back in history, I don't know if you're aware about the history of Equatoria. Equatorians were not part of South Sudan or Sudanese in general. We were known as Ladu Kingdom or Ladu English, and then later we were brought by those colonialists to Sudan to be part of Sudan for their colonialist interest. And now you see Equatoria became part of South Sudan. But remember, Equatoria is the same people who are now people are trying to occupy their land. They're the same people who actually advocated for, revolution for people who are of Black and, African heritage, while the people in the North used to call themselves Arab. Plus, I look back at the history of people mostly in Upper Nile. They all have a background in the North. That means that most of the people who are now living in Upper Nile, if you go back into their origin, and they know, but some of the academics and intellectuals of, in particular, Dinka, they would not want to accept that because right now they find a place where they can assimilate themselves with people there and call they are South Sudanese and the country belongs to everyone. No. This land has a map of its own. Like I would say, mean by that our region has already been territorial areas of tribes. So no tribe can override other tribes. What we see today in South Sudan is a tribal domination, and the SPLM is helping to facilitate. And if you're trying to say that you have spoken with the Jing Council, and Jing Council has acted inappropriately. You're supposed to stand on the point that this is an orchestrated plan, not only by the Jane Council, but the regime itself, since the establishment of SPLM, because we go back to the history why SPLM was created. We even know exactly the incident of Kokora means to a lot of Dinka majority. When you talk about Kokora, they always remember what happened when they were chased away.
The line has cut. I'm not okay. I'm hearing you now. Continue.
Okay, now come back. Yeah, network is breaking. Now continue. Go ahead.
Oh, my network?
No,
okay.
No, not yours.
Mine
is ours here. No, it's not yours. You are good. Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you now.
Yes, I said the former Khartoum, the former oppressor, have let us go because of some international work efforts. But at the end, they have allowed the people to voice their voices, and we have became a nation. And today, this regime is the one who hijacked the power from the people. So when we look at our people now, being treated as lesser or less than even equal citizens to the country, it shows you clearly this is injustice, oppression. This is a complete domination, and what we call it a neo-colonialism, but it's a neo-tribal colonialism on the side, on the right of the Equatorian people. The Equatorian people, they always define themselves, as we all know, that we are majority of tribe combined in that Equatorial area, and we are proud to say this is our heritage. But what we see today, there is some people do not want to see Equatoria separate. And I wonder why, when oppression is going on, when the mass rape and killing, the mass genocidal that is happening, and the armament of your own tribe to go and threaten Equatorial civilians who are not armed, so they can just settle there, and then they put excuse of water and issue of grazing. This is not our problem. And in South Sudan, I know you don't like my word. I'm going to wrap up quickly, but I'm just saying because I heard the other guy. It's not. Listen, sir, can you not interrupt me just to finish my point, please? I'm trying to put my point so I cannot forget what I'm trying to say. Okay? Because I have a question here. Who gave him for him to say that Equatoria cannot opt for self-determination? And what makes us South Sudanese when I am not equally respected as somebody who's from Dinka when it comes to citizenship, when it comes to my right as human being, when it comes to my land? And we are not nomadic tribes. We are tribes who have been there for the time, biblical time, we've been there. So I want to know what is his right for him to say that we cannot separate. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Peter. Oh, thank you, then. Okay, Peter, Biar Ajak, go ahead and answer those two.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, brothers, for the discussion. This is important. We are all sharing ideas here. None of us has a monopoly on knowledge. I was just invited as a guest, and any one of you can be the guest tomorrow, and you share your views and how you see the current events in our country. Just briefly, I want to say that South Sudan was able to accomplish the impossible. And that is that we changed the colonial borders that we inherited at the time of the decolonization of Africa. The Anglo-Egyptian Sudan was a made-up territory. It was invented mainly to support the interests of Egypt, particularly its interests as it concerned the Nile. In fact, if you go back to the Berlin Conference, what is now South Sudan was actually awarded to France. We would have become French. But Britain at the time, during the Victorian age, was the superpower in the world. And Egypt has, and it has already settled in Egypt. The Khedive of Egypt was dependent on the British regime to keep it in power. And one of the things that happened in the 19th century was the construction of the Suez Canal. So the Suez Canal reduced the distance between London and India by a third, the amount of time it requires to travel there. And that made Suez Canal the most strategic point in the entirety of the British Empire. And because Suez Canal is in Egypt, then the interests of Egypt become paramount. And after the Berlin Conference, British Empire was able to exert its claim to any territory that falls on the Nile. And that's why we ended up being sucked in to the British Empire. That was not the way it was agreed in the Berlin Conference. And you can see at the clash that almost happened in Fashoda between the French and the British, until, of course, the French were ordered to withdraw and allow the British to carry on. And they withdrew to Congo and then to Central African Republic. That's history there. And the reason why we succeeded in becoming independent was the nature of how the colonialism was exercised in Sudan, particularly through the closed district. During the closed district, the district in the south was one entity that was governed on its own, separate to the north, with its own customs, with own religious and traditional beliefs. And when the decolonization happened, it happened without consultation of South Sudanese. So if you see the Khartoum conference of 1946, no South Sudanese attended it. And that's where it was decided that now the district in the south and the district in the north would be joined into one. And later on, when the Juba conference happened, it was basically to endorse what was already agreed in 1946. And this is why later on SPLM was able to argue that the South Sudanese had not exercised self-determination since the colonial era in deciding where they belong as a people. And that's how we were able to vote in 2011 and create our own state. I don't think such argument can be made for Bahr Ghazal as a region, or Upper Nile as a region, or Equatoria as a region. I must also remind my brother that at some point, I was also part of Equatoria. In fact, many parts of the Dinka Boer were part of Mangala district before the creation of the Boer district. We were in Mangala, we were in Equatoria. So if you go back and read Douglas Johnson and other scholars, you have seen that this greater this and greater this doesn't mean much as people think. These things have been changing left and right. So we have to be very careful how we extake those arguments. And Equatorians are not the only people in this country that would want to create their own state. And in fact, they are not the only people within Africa that are trying to create their own states. Everybody is trying to create their own states. And there's a reason why when African Union was formed, previously as Organization of African Unity, it was agreed that we will be adopting the colonial borders the way they are and inherit them. So the notion of self-determination for Equatoria as a region, or Bahr Ghazal as a region, or Upper Nile as a region, doesn't exist. And it lacks any basis of legitimacy for that to be built. And if there are politicians telling you that such a thing is possible, then take it to me, my brother, that is just a pie in the sky that will never happen. The reality is this. I agree with you entirely. We have a regime in Juba that has failed us. That is true. I don't doubt it. Even in Gogrial, if you go to Werrap, and I have been, I visited Akun, where the president comes from. Water is so difficult to get, so difficult to get. People walk for days to go and get water. There's no infrastructure that is there. Let me not talk about Tony. It's even worse when you go there. You know, basic things are absent. And this is supposed to be the center of of power. There's nothing there. This regime has abandoned all the people of South Sudan. It's not just only Equatoria where people are abandoned. But there is a fundamental problem here with the argument that my brother was making, and which is being made by many politicians and rebel leaders from Equatoria. And this is to basically say that there is a Dinka domination. Dinka domination of what? You know, if you go in South Sudan to look reality of the economic situation people are dealing with now, everybody is suffering. All the citizens are suffering, whether they are Nuer, they are Dinka, they are Shuluk, they are Bari, they are all suffering. Everybody is suffering. There's no one that is benefiting. Only a clique, as I mentioned to you before, and that clique has Equatorians in it. Even the leader of NAS, Thomas Cirillo, was part of the elite not so long ago. So the idea that all of a sudden now is a Dinka that is a problem, that there is no such a thing. And thinking about kicking people out is not the way to solve the problem. I know people are frustrated with the government and they don't want to attack the government directly. So they want to come and attack vulnerable people, civilians that have fled. That is unacceptable behavior. We have to address the issue. We have a regime in the country that has failed us and that is turning the people of South Sudan together against each other. And if we fall for that, we will be in perpetual war. And the regime in Juba will remain in power, looting resources, doing its whatever that it is doing, and we'll still be here. And there will be nothing that will change. So it's better that we come together. There's no such a thing as second-class citizens in South Sudan. There is no such a thing. There's the elites, and then there is everybody else. There's individuals that control the state and its power and resources, and there's the others that are left behind and who are not getting anything in return. That is the reality of it. And this elite has everybody in it. And those who are suffering has everybody in it. So it's better that the people of South Sudan unite themselves into a collective entity and push this regime out. Not by saying we don't want a Dinka or we don't want a Nuer or we don't want... Why? Why don't you want them? They are part of South Sudan. And by the way, let's not forget the larger history of the world and of humankind. Many of us who occupy South Sudan now were not always in South Sudan. Many of the people that occupy Kenya now were not always in Kenya. This country that I sit in today, United States of America, those who occupy it now, and they are Americans, were not always here. Migration is a global phenomenon that will never end. People will always move. They will go and settle, and they will claim where they have settled in. This it has been happening for centuries before you and I and our tribes even existed. That is the reality of it. We are bordered by countries that are growing exponentially in terms of population. Ethiopia is now almost 120 million people. It's a tiny country. Kenya is already 50 million people. Tiny Uganda is 50 million people. Congo is reaching 80 million people. Yeah? So if you think you can push the Dinkas out, will you be able to push the other neighboring people out who will probably, if they see this weakened state that is turning on itself, will encroach on our territories and grab as much as they can? What will you do about that? So the idea that we can just fight each other and forget where we are and the larger external challenges that we face is problematic and is very short-sighted. We need to be seeing long-term. We need to unite our people. Population is going to grow. And by the way, you are mistaken. Not all the tribes in Equatoria are farming tribes. I live in Equatoria also. In Eastern Equatoria, most of the tribes are pastoralists. What do you say of Taposa? Are Taposas farmers? Where do Taposas farm? They're cattle keepers. What about Boya? Are they cattle keepers? Or are they farmers? They're cattle keepers. What do you say of Lotuko? There are so many tribes in Equatoria, in Eastern Equatoria, who are pastoralists. So they move also with their cattle, and they move to other parts. In fact, now if you find in some places where none of these political nonsense exists, you find cattle camps that are people that are composed of people from different tribes, particularly now between the Dinka and Mundari. You find that. So let's encourage our people into a one melting pot. Let's share our resources. As I mentioned to you before, we are sharing the oil. You never heard one day the Nuer or the Dinka in Upper Nile saying that the oil is ours and should be left to us. And let's also think about some of these resources will be depleted. Take now what is happening with the pollution in Upper Nile and Unity State. We don't talk about it much, but the land there is polluted. People are dying, especially among the Padang Dinka. It's a real disaster. At some point, these people will need to be relocated. If we all claim that this land belongs to this tribe and this tribe is the one that is going to allocate it, what is going to happen to us when some part of the land will become difficult to be inhabited? What if tomorrow there is a volcano explosion and certain part of the land is occupied by a volcano? Do those people become what? They don't have any land? So land now is, because we are tribe X, we control who stay in our tribe? This is a complete nonsense. And it was a mistake by this regime to even allow these sentiments to take hold in the first place. And I blame this unwise presidential decree that Salva Kiir signed, saying he ordered cattle out of Equatoria. How do you order cattle out of Equatoria? How do you order economic activities out of a region when they are integral part of that country? It makes no sense. And you see now the pain that the cattle keepers in Equatoria are enduring is actually the intended target is the government, but because they are unable to get the government, they are basically targeting the people. So let's call the spade a spade. Let's call the truth the truth. We need to find mechanism, mediation between the cattle keepers and farmers. And we also need to find mediation mechanism between cattle keepers themselves so that we deal with the issue of cattle raiding and all the other intercommunal violence. But our regime in Juba is not interested in that. This is why I said before, our main focus as the people of South Sudan should be how do we bring about a legitimate government that can help to address this issue. Otherwise, issues that are not supposed to kill people are killing people. We are a country, if the population has grown that much, from the 8 million that we were in 2010, maybe maximum we are 12 million. 12 million in a land the size of France. France is a country of more than 50 million, and they're able to fit in that country. How is it that 12 million people are not able to fit in the same land when they are blessed with natural resources, when they are blessed with abundant land, when they are blessed with everything? So it's not true. It's the politicians that are duping us. So let us be wise and wake up from our deep slumber and find ways in which we can coexist as a people, build our national unity, and move our country forward. But if we take on these crazy ideas that outsiders are putting on the table, that somehow the land is being taken, we will be inviting a self-fulfilled prophecy. Self-fulfilled prophecy is when you imagine something that doesn't exist. You pretend that it is the truth. You see everything from that perspective, and before you know it, that reality that you fear become the actual reality. So let's avoid that one. No one wants to occupy the land of Equatoria. No one wants to occupy the land of Bargazal or the land of Upper Nile. You find that the Ngabor people are in Europe. They're in a area, as someone mentioned to you before, they're in Goliar. Have you heard people in Lake State saying that the Boer people are coming to occupy our land? No. Why? Because they know that is not the case. They see the situation. So how is it that our brothers in Equatoria are so blinded to the needs that are going on in Jonglei, the issues of flood, particularly the issue of flood? Because you can argue insecurity can exist everywhere, but the issue of flood, how can people not be so blinded to that? And where are the land going to be taken? Will someone put it in their head and move with it to Jonglei? Will it not remain there? Now, if I want to buy a house in Torit, are you telling me I cannot buy a land in Torit and own it as my land? Does the Constitution not allow me to do that? If I want to buy a land in Kapoita or in Yambio, I cannot buy it because it belonged to the Zande or it belonged to Taposa? That is not the case. So let's focus on realities And let's forget about crazy ideas. How do we make this country work? How do we make this country to succeed? That are the issues that we should be focusing on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Biar Ajak. Before I let you go, I have one more guest, Ustaz Rajab Mahandis. He will be the last speaker. So, Ustaz Rajab Mahandis, if you can hear my voice, you can open your microphone and go ahead with your question to Dr. Biar. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, my brother. And thank you so much, Peter Biar Ajak, for this presentation and responses to the questions raised. I thank everyone, and I'll be brief. I joined a bit late, and so I missed quite a big bulk of the presentations. But from what I heard, let me just provide this brief comments. Number one is that the conversation, of course, is about cattle herders and the ongoing crisis that relates to the cattle herders in different parts of the country, particularly in areas of Equatoria. I want to go back briefly to say that the whole entire area of Equatoria has been a place that has been accommodating or welcoming people from different parts of the country, but also from the neighboring countries. In the 1980s, we had a very large number of Ugandan refugees in South Sudan. In my own hometown in Maridi, we had like 5 camps, very big refugee camps that hosted those people. And eventually, they left when Uganda became a little more stable. In the 1990s, early 90s, when we had crisis in the SPLM, a big population of the community involved got displaced, and they were hosted in Western Equatoria, and I think in some parts of Equatoria as well. In my hometown, we had a very big camp, exactly where some of the refugees live, the Ugandan refugees, a place called Angutwa. And the IDPs lived there for some time until when situations improved. And I remember a captain was sent from board who then eventually took them back. In Mundri, we also had a big size of the population. So I want to believe that the issue of displacement or people moving, especially community from Bor, coming to parts of Victoria because of crisis in those areas, has never been a problem. But what appears to be an issue now is actually a pattern. To me, it appears like a pattern that is raising concerns among the people of Equatoria. I have worked a lot in South Sudan as a civil society member, and we have always engaged state and seen the state as the problem. As Peter Biar Ajak explained earlier, it's the state failure to protect people and to manage the society that has given rise to all these crises that we have, including even the rebellions and all this. And so if we want to get a proper solution to this, our belief, my personal belief, was that we could fix the state. But understandably, the concerns we see now that seems to be coming up so seriously among the people of Equatoria relates to a pattern of crisis, of relationship that does not go well between the cattle herders and the farming communities in Equatoria. In my own hometown, if I can go back a little bit, we've had lots of cattle herders coming from Bahr el Ghazal to these areas, and including those who moved in the 1990s, especially in areas like Mundri. The relationship soured very badly because of encroachment on farms. And the biggest problem is that there is nowhere you go and report and get these issues decisively addressed. Now, if I, because of time, I would be very fast in concluding on it. If if you go back to see how things have worsened and leading to people calling for independent Equatoria, most of this has been especially around the area, the period of this conflict in the country now. Peter Biar mentioned Riak went through parts of Equatoria to Congo. Now, eventually, this is what happened. These places were all very peaceful. And if you went to places like Yei, there was a big population of people from different parts of the country in Yei. Yei was booming, and most of these areas were very peaceful, even from Juba to Nimule. But when you go to these places today, for example, Riak didn't run from Juba through MAGWI, Nimule, and all this. But all these areas got destroyed. And the president himself actually accepted, mentioned one time in Juba that these places got destroyed by actually the forces. Now, when you go to Yei areas, when Riak passed through that area, the people in those areas, most of them didn't even know what was happening. But eventually, we had big size of Matiang and Yor that were flooded in these areas, and a lot of atrocities were posed to the people in these local communities. And that was partly why, some of the relationships really soured very badly. No try to address these issues and give evidence to the people that, first of all, those causing crime, yes, crimes against the local population will be punished. And you find that there is nowhere people will go to get justice. Eventually, people begin to retaliate in different ways. So these issues now, like what is happening, it is also again surprising, partly because you find this cattle herders who come first. They move in with lots of weapons, and there is no coordination or understanding with the local communities. I mentioned when we had displacement from Bor to Maridi, a place was designated, a whole area was designated, and the community settled with their cattle and lived peacefully with the local community because there was no encroachment on the farms. But what is happening now is these people get to these areas and there was no understanding, and the farms are, others flooded out with the local community to go to get help. And this is
Is Rajab there? Abraham, are you there? Madid?
Okay, it's back. Yeah, he's here. Yeah, go ahead, Ajak.
Yes, I saw several letters that were petitions delivered by the Madi community to Juba. And there has actually been no serious responses from the government. And because of this, the failure to manage these relationships and even put up policies on how we regulate movement of cattle and how they interact generally, we have ourselves in this situation. So what matters is an honest acknowledgement of the level of atrocities, but also the pain that is caused on the people. If the government was able to manage the relationship, but also avoid these forces which
Madid? I think, all right, I think the network is having problem. I think Madid has been booted out, and I think Rajab has been booted out. So as we wait for them to return, there are a few things that I'm going to respond.
Okay, hang on, Dr. Peter Biar. Yeah, Rajab, you wrap it up. We are having a network issues here.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
So
yeah.
we need, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yes, we need a comprehensive solution that gives everyone hope that when there is a problem that we face, for example, we face a problem in Bor or some of these locations, there will be a way to handle the situation and help the people overcome these challenges. When there is a genuine concern that is being raised by the communities in Equatoria, there will be a way to respond to these issues. Otherwise, if this is not happening, it will be very difficult to see how we will be peaceful and even how we will coexist as a country. So we have so many dangers that we face today than when we were facing with Khartoum. And because of what was happening between us and the Northerners, we ended up separating. And if we continue to have the same problems, we see the country disintegrating without any question. So there is so much challenge that face us, our existence as a country, but also as communities that we must address. So I think, Peter, maybe my question would be, how do we get to the bottom of this? Honestly, acknowledging these unfortunate situations happening, but also finding ways that we could give hope to everyone. Those who are displaced, the cattle herders, but also the farming communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Sadra Jamadis. Dr. Peter Biar, go ahead and answer.
Well, let me start by saying it's really good to hear from Rajab Mahandis. He's my very good friend and has been a very long time since I heard his voice. Thank you, Rajab, for joining this conversation and for bringing in your perspective and the historical example that you have shared. I agree with you entirely, Rajab, that the fundamental problem of South Sudan is the collapse of the state. The state is unable to function. And from the very beginning, this is where I started. We have a regime in Juba that is unresponsive to the needs of the population, and which is not there to really create mechanism for which our people can live peacefully. So I agree with you entirely that to really address these problems requires addressing the state. And doing that, we really have to change the leadership that is there. These leadership of those of Salva Kiir and those of Riek Machar, they have failed South Sudan, and I don't think there is any hope whatsoever that they will ever do anything differently that can help South Sudanese people to move forward. So I will start that this is really where the fundamental problem is. I agree with you that we really need to look at this issue from a perspective of both the cattle keepers as well as the farming communities or the host communities that own those lands. And as I mentioned to you before, crises that are forcing the cattle keepers to move in Jonglei are there. And these are huge issues that can only be addressed by the state. But the state is absent and is unable to address that. I also agree with you that it's completely unfair when the cattle keepers are moving in to the farming areas and have cattle destroy farms and feed on farm. It's completely unacceptable. And indeed, because of the failure of the state to provide security in South Sudan, everyone has resorted to arming themselves. In fact, it makes sense. When I was in Juba, I had to arm myself because that is the only way that anyone can survive that place. There is unknown gunmen, there is different militia groups, there are whatsoever out there that is trying to kill you. So obviously it makes sense that everyone find ways to arm themselves. And it's very sad. And this is certainly what has happened with the cattle keepers. And it seems to be what is happening now with the farming communities. They are all arming themselves because the state is not there to protect anybody. So, but I feel like our people are then falling into an unfortunate situation that is being created by the state, so that the state can continue to project power while have the people fighting themselves. So instead of us falling into that, as I was saying before, our people should wise up and shun all of this nonsense that is coming from clubhouses and from politicians who are desperate. Yes, they want to overthrow the government, and I agree with them that this regime has no legitimacy to remain in place. But when they use the people of South Sudan and stir them up against one another, that is a problem. And that is something that is unacceptable. So instead of our people allowing themselves to be used in that regard, let them find mechanism where they can really address the issues. I agree with you. This problem could have been addressed by the state if it has intervened when the communities were appealing to them, that there is this crisis that is here, and that crisis need to be addressed. But they were unresponsive. So it seems like our people every time have to do the things for themselves, as if they don't have a government, and that is extremely unfortunate. But I would suggest now, for both the safety and security and prosperity of these communities, that they address the issues and find the ways in which they can accommodate. I am very sure that once the flooding situation in Jonglei is, because cattle keepers don't stay in one place for too long. They're staying in MAGWI now. Maybe give it another month or so, they will move to another area. They will completely move. They don't stay. This is the nature of pastoralism. They don't stay in one area. They will move. So I'm sure if the flood situation in Jonglei was to be brought under control, they will move to other areas. You will find that within 2 months, these cattle camps now that were in MAGWI may be even in Mundri, or will be even back to Lake State or some parts of Jonglei. That is the reality of it. So this is seasonal. It's the same thing you see even from the north, Rizigat, they come to Abyei, and each time the communities, they have to sit down themselves and find a way that they can deal with this situation, because that is the nature of the cattle keeping. That is the nature of pastoralism. So we have to encourage our people not to drum up propaganda. And like this article, this book by this lady is a complete nonsense, complete nonsense. And these are part of the things that end up dividing our people and making it impossible to see really common objectives and common things that unite the South Sudanese people. We are all suffering in the hands of this regime in Juba, all our people, wherever they are in the country. But we are being diverted from where the real focus should be. That is the real focus. How do we bring about a legitimate government that is responsive to our needs? How do we do that? That is the issue that we should all be thinking about. So let us shun these tribalism and these misleading, quote unquote, academic work, like this nonsense that this lady has written, just bunch of garbage. There's no really reason for our people to take those things seriously and listen to them. We know the crises that have made this situation to happen. And we know that at the end of the day, every South Sudanese life, whenever it is lost, is a tragedy because it should be avoided. So let us find ways for these communities to live in harmony. And then once the season change, like within the next 2-3 weeks, they will move. They will move to the other parts, and they will take with their cattle other parts. But it's important that they organize themselves so that they have the leadership and are able to talk with the host community wherever they are going and talk to them. They are shown areas where they can settle that is far away from the farms. And if indeed there are cases where cattle go in and they eat crops in the farm, then there have to be compensation. There have to be compensation to the farmers for the loss that has been inflicted upon them. So I think those things has to happen. And if the national government has failed and is unresponsive, then the state government have to do something, and they have to make sure they come to the rescue of our people. Because at the end of the day, if our people fight themselves, like the way that they have been doing, we will not enjoy all the endowment that the God has given us in this beautiful land called South Sudan. And let's not think that there is some shortcut that you can just go and create your own country. Even if you go and create your own country with this kind of crisis and this kind of mentality and inability of state to function, then nothing will change. We thought creating South Sudan will solve all our problems. In fact, as we have now realized, it has made them worse. So it's about us confronting the issues that we face. How do we fix the regime in Juba? How do we make sure that we have a government there that actually deliver for the people? And I've been talking about elections, us pushing for elections that are mediated entirely by the UN, where the UN provides security, where UN is present at all the polling stations, where the UN help in the counting of the votes and declaration of the results, so that we bring into power a government that is legitimate, that can allow our people to unite themselves and move forward. But if we continue to drum up tribalism and painting to segment our population as the enemy, then we will be stuck in a cycle of violence that will never end.
Thank you so much, Dr. Biar Ajak. We are coming to an end. This is the last. My co-host in Clubhouse, Dan Kamis and True Africa. If you guys can put in your last remark, and I will let our guests go.
Thank you so much, Abraham. First of all, I will just give a word of appreciation to the main speaker, that is Peter Biar. Thank you for your time and for your views. Also give thanks to those people who create the time actually to participate in this discussion, especially my brother David. Thank you so much, Wilson. We appreciate your input. And to my good brother Ajak Madis, thank you. We always admire how you articulate your thoughts and how you present the issues at hand that are facing the entire nation of South Sudan. Yeah, to the topic actually, some of us hold the view that when the society is filled with a hatred and actually are not to accept themselves that are one piece, then the last resort is to separate these people. That is how you can rescue them. We actually, myself, I support the order which was issued by the president to let these cattle keepers relocate back to their areas. Even if they will not go back to Jonglei, considering what Peter Biar articulated, we agree those factors and hold them constant instead of leaving our people killing themselves, and we have several alternatives. Then some of us suggest these people can even be moved back to Lagos State, especially Wayal and Yerulis County. They can spend their time here until the issue of flood and the issue of insecurity is addressed in Jonglei. Actually, it was yesterday that another incident happened in the Payam called Lokiro or Lokiri. Like 19 people were killed, houses were burned, and things have never happened to that extent that you have to kill and burn the house. These things, they just emerged recently in the case of Eastern Equatoria. Even when we were fighting with the Riyadh, I don't think that there were some houses which were burned, but that issue needs to be condemned strongly. Even if people fight, you don't need to burn your own brother's house. There are a lot of things in the house, and you don't need to do that. And the only solution is to let these cattle keepers be relocated to somewhere they can be set where they can graze their cattle peacefully and leave the farmers of Equatoria, especially the eastern part, the central part of it, to graze and actually farm at the peaceful time. And through that, it will also create a harmony, and people will dialogue and communicate to the extent, even in the future, they can still come back when the two communities understand and try to draft some bylaws on which side should cattle be kept inside of Eastern Equatoria and which side should be actually for the farmers. So that, and there should be a certain democracy and the rule of law. To all wrap it up, actually our country is suffering because there is no leadership. And if we have leadership in place, these things that are taking lives of our innocent people would have not supposed to happen. These are things that should be addressed by the leadership adequately. Yeah, I've taken a lot of time, but this is my view. I appreciate the audience for your time. May God be with you, and let's always talk. Let's always talk, and we will find a common ground where our heart, our mind, our ideas will rest and coexist peacefully. And may God be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, True Africa. Then, Kamis?
Yes, I am here. Thank you, Biar Ajak, for your time. My brother, Biar Ajak, and all the participants, and my co-host, True Africa, and Tony. Tony is actually at work. He came and left. I'm not going to take that long. Brother Rajab Mandi, nice meeting you again for the second time to share the podium. This is what I'm going to say about this issue. We have actually dwelled our time on it for quite a long time. My brother Biar, thank you for your time, and some comments that I have actually noticed. They are very powerful, and we can keep them for our life because we are the same generation sharing the same life every day. This is about the book of Dr. Carroll, who was the one that brought a lot of people to the clubhouse here. It's for your awareness. And this issue of cattle holders that's being attacked, it started last year in December of 2021. We all fought here, tried to dispute the book that was written, and it did not work. Some main intellectuals, and they are, some of them, they are icon of this nation, participate in this matter in the clubhouse. We all experienced, we tried, but it didn't work. And here, the last time the attack took place in MAGWI area when the governor of Eastern Equatoria went and visited the allegation that there was a military camp that is actually been opened in MAGWI, in Ayi. That allegation took him there, and his statement was fine. And afterward, after he left, they came up and said, "Oh, the governor of Eastern Equatoria is actually issuing the go-ahead night." But can do, and that result you have missed in the clubhouse. When Michael McQueen, the Minister of Information, when he released that statement in the event of Uncle Liera Yom prayers, the cattle keepers were actually ready to leave. But the question is, if you want you don't want somebody to live in your area, and by the time they are preparing themselves to leave, why do you attack them? And that is actually attributed to one of our brothers said it here before that Equatorial doesn't have guns. 32 people were killed in that week before the cattle keepers took a revenge to do some other killing that, oh no. No, how did that 32 people die if there were no guns in Eastern Equatoria? If they don't, if those civilians in Eastern Equatoria, if they are not armed, that's a pending question. We can still talk about it. That time it's very difficult to solve the problem of South Sudan. I will rest my case. It was your day, and we can still meet there in our in the Greater Board TV if we have more to talk about it as a family member of Dinka Board one day or sometime if we have time. We can discuss more over there. I have my own position on my case, but I'm not going to add it on.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Madit, and everybody. Appreciate your time, Madit.
Thank you, dear brother Dengamis, and thank you for those of you in Clubhouse. Dr. Peter Biar, I will give you to put your last remark, and then you can go.
Well, thank you so much, Brother Madid, for inviting me to have this conversation. I also want to thank your co-moderators in the Clubhouse. They have done a wonderful job at keeping the discussion going. I want to thank every South Sudanese that have tuned in to follow this conversation. Of course, I know every time when we have a discussion on issues that matter, people get mad, especially when they don't hear what they want you to say. And one thing about me, I form my own ideas, not because they will be popular. That is not why I say them. I say them because that is how I feel and what my mind tells me to be what is right. And obviously, if I realize that I'm wrong, I'm always brave enough to admit and to learn from those who are offering the corrected view. So let's say that none of us has a monopoly on knowledge. As I said before, all of us are learning from one another. And I like to believe that all of us are patriotic citizens of South Sudan. We want this country to succeed. And we have
to respect ourselves one.
Okay, we are back. We are back.
We're not going to depict them anyway, but I'll keep that with you.
Okay, Dengamis, we are back. We are back, Dengamis. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Pierre.
Yeah, I like to believe that we are all patriotic citizens. We like this country to work, and we are committed to seeing it succeed. So with that, I think we can move forward in earnest. This topic is controversial because you have extreme positions that are taken. One is the position, I've been reading some of the comments where people are saying that Dinka cattle must leave Equatoria. That is one extreme position. And then on the other, you have the situation of flood and insecurity in Jonglei. And even to cross into Lake State, you have to go through Jonglei from Equatoria. Or unless you go through Central Equatoria, through Terekega County, that is the only other solution. But otherwise, you will have to enter first to Jonglei and then cross the Nile to that side of Lake State. And that is one option. And I want to thank those who have come up with that idea. It's something that need to be explored. And we need to think about the possibility of providing security to those who will need to take that journey. But I have a fundamental problem with the notion that tribes of South Sudan have the right to refuse other fellow South Sudanese to come into their territories. This is something that should never be encouraged because our country is one country. We all died for it. All South Sudanese from all the different tribes, they fought bravely for the independence of South Sudan. And they didn't fight for it because of their tribes or what their tribes will gain from it. They fought for it because they knew that they are a people and they were fighting for their own rights so that they create their own state and pursue their aspirations as a people. So the idea that after gaining that, because the regime in Juba has failed us, we all return to our tribes and we are kicking out other South Sudanese that don't belong in our tribes. If we do that, we are forsaking everything that we have ever held dear, and we are giving up on our country and idea of South Sudanese identity. We should not be holding on to these tribal regional identities. These are tools that are used by the regime and warlords that are now in power to divide our people and to strengthen their rule. We should be embracing one South Sudanese identity. And we know that our land is large and is blessed with a lot of resources. We should share them. We should put in place a proper constitutional order. Now that we no longer fear North Sudanese from stealing our land, we should put in the constitution that the land belongs to the people of South Sudan, not to communities. Because no communities will ever defend that land if it is invaded by outsiders. It will be the government of South Sudan. It will be the collective people of South Sudan that will defend that land. So let's embrace those ideas. Let's think about how do we fix the state, because the reason we are having all these problems is because the government in Juba doesn't work, or it is not interested in dealing with the affairs of our citizens. And when these things happen, people divide themselves along tribes. They embrace that because it will ensure that the conflict will never reach Juba. People will be killing themselves there in the countryside, and they are happy in Juba getting their oil money and putting it in their pockets. So we have to change Juba. And to change Juba, we need to unite ourselves. We need to build national ideas. We need to build a sense of a national vision, a shared vision for all of us, not just for Equatoria or Bargazal or Upper Nile or for Dinka or for Zande or for Anuak. It has to be a national vision that includes all of us so that we bring about that mighty nation that our people died for to bring about. It is possible. We should not give up on that idea now. I know that the last 10 years have been very hard. Many of us have struggled. We have faced a lot of pain, but that is not an excuse for us to give up. It took 21 years of sacrifice for us to reach the CPA and eventually to reach our independence. So make no mistake, to bring about a legitimate government in Juba is going to take time and it's going to take sacrifice. And we should be disciplined and we should be honest so that we devote ourselves to nonviolent struggle, preaching unity, consolidating our unity, building a shared vision of state and nationhood, and then bringing about that regime, that government that will be able to allow us to move forward. Let's shun these garbage from outsiders. There is no such a thing as a certain tribe that want to take over a territory of another tribe. That is not that. South Sudanese citizens can always go and ask for land. There is areas that are being developed, whether capital cities or other cities. You can go and buy a plot. At one point, I had a plot in Ye. I'm not a Kakwa, but I was able to buy a plot there. So any South Sudanese should feel that they can stay anywhere. And we create a country that is truly united, where your friends, your best friend, are from different tribes, where your partner, whether it's wife or husband, come from another tribe. We build a nation, not remain in our settlement as tribes from whatever time period that we settled those lands. Then we are giving up on that idea. We're not building a nation. People should have a right of mobility. And these unconstitutional actions on the side of the government, ordering certain economic activities not to be in a certain part of the country, those things should not be accepted because a law that is not justified, a law that is unjust, have no authority to be obeyed since it doesn't come from God. God is the source of law and is the source of justice. And if you have a state leader, whether it is a president or a governor, saying something that is nonsense, saying that certain economic activities cannot be undertaken in certain part of the country because people are not originally from that cannot be accepted, because and that also is the source of the crisis that is facing our people. So let us also be mindful of our own duty as citizens, and let's pay attention. We have a state here that is not interested in our own livelihoods, whether we are Dinka or whether we are Nuer, we are Shuluk, we are from Anuak, or we are from Bari, or from Jie, or from the Dinka. This regime is not interested in our welfare and is looking to use us as a people. So the regime in Juba should be very careful, because our people are fed up with the tactics that they have been using. And at some point, God will make them realize that they have no problem among themselves as people of South Sudan, that the problem come from the failed leaders who are sitting in Juba having tea and drinking whiskey together, while the rest of South Sudanese are killing themselves to defend them and to defend the crazy ideas that are aimed at nothing but dividing the people of South Sudan further. Once we realize that and we work on consolidating our unity, God will grant us the power that will allow us to achieve absolute victory in our country.
Thank you so much, Dr. Peter Biar Ajak, for wonderful. Thank you for accepting to come in today. I appreciate it. And I hope I will see you back again if we have another topic to discuss. And for those of you Clubhouse, those speakers, thank you so much. I will let you, thank you for being here for 4 hours. Take that 4 hours on your time, and then we South Sudanese come together. And the more we talk about the issues, and then the more we can find the common ground and fixing the issue. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful night, Dr. Peter Biar Ajak. Thank you again for coming in. I appreciate it so much. And South Sudanese who are in Clubhouse, thank you so much. Then Commission through Africa. You guys continue with the room, and I will close down the studio down here. So thank you, Dr. Peter Ajak. Have a good night. Thank you so much.
Good night. Bye-bye.
And thank you all who are watching in on Facebook, YouTube, and Clubhouse. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rajab. Thank you, Dengi Dayok, and the rest of the speakers. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys again next time. Deng Kamis and True Africa, you guys can close the room.
Today we are free. Oh yes, we are free at last. Freedom has come today. We had a dream, burning like a fire. Yeah, we must come through today. We are believers, believing in the struggle. Yeah, we must come through today. Rise up, your banner is waving, hey, freely in the air. Rise up, your flag is waving.
Thank you, guys.
Freely in the air. Oh, let me hear you sing. We are free at last. 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 Remember the day, a day of jubilation. Freedom has come today. Salute the martyrs, salute the warriors. Freedom has come today.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Have a good morning, good evening, whatever you have. May God bless you. May God bless South Sudan. Have a good night.
Okay, Madid, how much?